Welcome, everybody, to Order 42. I am Rob, and with us today is Jim. Jim is back, and we are going to be discussing The Godfather.
Yes.
This was your first time through.
Yes.
Which is really... I mean, I get it. Hey, Eagle Ford, Vicky, hi. Oh, and thank you, Jim, for the resub. 4 months.
Of course.
Appreciate that. But
of course.
But yeah, I guess the whole thing was that I guess it was us talking about the possibility of them coming out with a third, I guess almost like a director's cut, and that's what
started it.
Yeah,
because I was like, that would be something interesting to see, but having no context. So let me take everyone on the trip that's happened in the last 2 weeks. So immediately after the show, I go looking to see how I could view it. Is it on streaming services or whatever? It's not. You pretty much have to either buy it digitally or get it on Blu-ray. And I happened to find the most recent release, which is like this huge big box that has all kinds of crazy stuff in it. I'm like, I don't need all that trash. I don't know if I like the movie that much. And the same set with just the same discs is in a region-free set in the UK. I got it for $30. And it came, and then I made it a point to sit down and watch them, and I binged them. Watched the first one, went right into the second one, finished it, and then queued up the third one and watched the third one the next day. And I just went, watched it, just binged them. And then went into all the bonus materials, and then went back and watched almost all the commentaries, which I'll get into when we get to the third movie. And by this time, somewhere in there, I was talking to somebody about it, and they were like, well, how much was it? And I said, well, 30. And I was like, look, I clicked on it. The same set had gone down to like $20. And I was like, rah! First of all, it's a great deal. And second of all, I just paid 30. Rah! So I contacted Amazon, and they were playing hardball, but they're like, well, we don't really do price match and this and that. And I'm like, bullshit, because you've done it for me before. Because at one point I'd bought in these shelves. I'd bought in like 6 media shelves, and I paid $60 for each one, and they were worth it at the time. But they went, by the time I received them, they'd gone down to 30, and they gave me credit for all the half price of all of them. So out of that, you get another $180 back in your account. It's like, you've done it before. So they gave me like $9 and some change credit. And so as soon as that arrived in my car, I turned right around and I bought Gremlins 1 and 2 on Blu-ray for the price of nothing. So
that's pretty good.
Not a bad deal, yeah. And I think I have one of the Gremlins at least, but I may not. And it was just like, well, even if I don't have them, I have them here because everything else is in the storage stuff. But watching The Godfather for the first time, as I explained on the last episode, when last we left our heroes, I was very dubious about it, not because I doubted the quality of the films, but because they are so oft quoted. There are so many things that are influenced by them. I was worried that it would have the Star Wars syndrome, where if you've never seen it before and you see it now, you look at it almost as a cliche to a certain degree.
Right.
And I was worried that it would somehow be a lesser experience. I am happy to say that was not the case. Certainly I saw where the influences came from, but the fact is that those films, every last one of them, are so beautifully shot and masterfully acted, with one exception, really well edited, to the point where I was very, very pleased with the overall experience. I will bury the lead and say that Godfather 3 was not anywhere near the low point of the series for me that I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Given the knowledge that a new version is coming out, I see the potential of that film. And because I know that there's other stuff he wanted to do with it, I have to say that it was frustrating to watch because you, as someone who likes to edit, loves films, a student of film, a wannabe filmmaker myself, although I probably will never actually make a film of my own.
Oh,
I like to act a lot more.
I was gonna say you made a film, but anyway,
I didn't make it. I just showed up and was like, hey, for whatever.
That's Jim's character throughout the whole.
Yeah. That's that's high level acting, but I could see the seams, I could see the cracks, and if he fills the holes of that movie in the way that I think he will, that's going to become my favorite Godfather film, because the story of Godfather 3, the story of it and the way that it moves and the pacing overall, I think is superior to the other two films for what I like. That said, the first two films are amazing and are kind of like, they're meant to be put together. However, I have to say that although Godfather 3 would probably be the one I want to watch the most just because I really like that story, it's really cool, I really, really loved Godfather 2. Like, that was really good. Godfather 1's amazing. That's going to get watched from time to time. But it is what it is. Like, this is kind of, it was like basically, to me, in the context of watching a whole series, it was this big, long expository thing, establishing everything, based spoilers. It's a 2.5 hour setup for Michael. It's really all it is. It's all it really was. It said, here's the situation at hand, and now at the end, boom. Because the spoilers, again, heavy spoilers, fuck it. If you haven't seen them, sorry. Please go watch them. No, I won't lend you my copy. It's only $20. You can afford it. Go get it. Essentially, and here's what I think is the coolest thing about is that the Godfather, as it relates to the title, is Michael, not Vito. It's about Michael. The whole series is about fucking Michael. And I loved that, because even knowing that this character was the focus of the other two films, which I thought was more of a necessity thing because of Marlon Brando, honestly, that's what it felt like, not really knowing what the story was. It never occurred to me that the first film would also, in essence, be about Mike. I didn't know that. It was really cool. So when I got to see that in the film, I was like, oh, you fuckers, you got me. I was like, okay, all right, okay, all right, I can dig this.
Now, there's before. I mean, yeah, we're gonna kind of go through some of the movies and talk about some of the things in particular. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is this concept that you had said, comparing The Godfather to Goodfellas. And
yeah.
Because you like Goodfellas more.
Yes, but I think the reason I like Goodfellas and Casino more than I probably would, because the thing is, even in context, if I had seen Godfather before, I still would have liked Goodfellas more because it's more of my speed. So the way that I described it to you over messaging, or we were speaking, we did a call or something, I think. And what I said was, The Godfather is like Metallica. The whole series is like Metallica, where this is what a gangster movie is supposed to be. You know what you're going to get, and it's solid all the way through. No wasted energy. Some hiccups here and there, but it's masterful, it's elegant, and it hits pretty hard. The Goodfellas and Casino are like Napalm Death or Grindcore, where it's bombastic, it doesn't let up, it's relentless, and it just oozes aggression and everything. So like Goodfellas is very much like and Casino are like punk, grindcore, more immediate, more brash, which fits my personality a bit more. Both equally good and in the right mood with the right context of watching. Amazing films through and through. So like I'm much more a Scorsese guy than I am a Coppola guy. even more so now that I've gotten to know Francis Ford Coppola as a director a bit more. I don't like him very much. I don't like him very much at all. The guy is self-absorbed and egotist, and he repeats himself too much, which I will go into. His commentaries are fucking worthless. They're worthless.
I actually... Okay, so here's what I did. Because I've seen the movies...
What did you did?
What did I did?
What did you did?
So I got really busy on Thursday doing other crap, whatever. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to watch these movies. So I started yesterday at around noon.
Yeah.
And I watched all three back to back to back on the commentaries. I just watched it because I've seen the movies so many times. I own them.
I'd like to think you know what I'm talking about already then.
Yeah. But I owned... Bucho, what's up, sir?
What's up, Bucho?
And of course, Eagle Ford and Vicky. I think I said that earlier. That they're both here.
Yes.
And they said hi to you, by the way.
I saw that. I was like, there may be a time when I ask you a favor.
Yeah. But
see, now I can do all the impressions that I know what they mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Yeah. But you've got. I had the widescreen VHS. I had the DVD set. I've had the Blu-ray set, and then I also bought the digital collection just so it's handy. But I've got them.
I'll eventually do that.
I've got all of these now. So what I did, as I'm sitting there watching the commentaries through Godfather 1, I'm sitting there going, I'm enjoying this commentary. What's the problem?
First one was pretty good. The first one wasn't bad.
Yeah, but then the second one, he let scenes play out without talking, and that's the most annoying thing, because for me as a commentary, if you're watching a commentary, it means you're a fan of the movie, right? You've seen the movie already. You want to see, what the director has to say. And for me, what happens is when he stops talking and then the movie starts playing, I get sucked into the movie, and then I get annoyed when he returns.
Right. And to make matters worse, he will make the same points over and over and over again about his feelings about a character or what this is about, what that is about, this and that.
Right.
And it is no more prevalent and on display than the commentary for 3. I got about a third of the way through it, close to halfway through, and I'm just like, fuck you. And I just turn it off. I'm like, I get it. Your daughter got cast at the last minute. You were forced into the decision, but you felt it was right because you felt there was a parallel, because in many ways this was you projecting your story into Michael in that context. I respect that. I think it was a cool story choice. It injected a lot of realism to it and made it more of a personal thing for him, which shows in the direction. You can tell it was a much more personal movie. Like, the further you go along, the more intimate these movies become, and that's a good thing. I have no problem with the decisions. I understand why there was the backlash at the time about the casting. I could give a shit about it now. No, she can't act. She doesn't have to act because she really was that character. And I know that because I heard it 97 times in 40 minutes of a commentary. It's like, Jesus Christ, I get it. Like, it's cool. Can we move on, please, to something interesting about this? The only thing I picked up on it that I didn't really know is that he tried really hard to kind of parallel some actual historic things that happened around that time to make it all kind of fit within, to make it more believable, and it was good. I liked it in that way. But he's almost like too literal. And not in a fun Arnold Schwarzenegger commentary on Conan the Barbarian kind of way. Like, look at this girl, I'm getting laid a lot in this movie. Like, that was funny to me, but he wasn't offering substance. It was just him going over the film at that point. I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care.
Well, it's so here's the one of the things that he had mentioned, just one thing. I mean, there's many little stories, side stories and stuff that are very, very interesting. Like, I love Marlon Brando's pranks in the first movie, when he's talking about that. I love hearing those. But one of the things that was interesting is that, like, from a from just a person point of view, from a director's point of view,
Sure.
he got really to the point where it was like, I don't have the passion anymore to make, to fight every day for every decision and all that stuff. He's older and all that stuff. And you can kind of see that in the direction. And I think as directors get older, people get older, you know,
Right.
that their willingness to fight for those things goes away. And you get to the point where you're like, it's not that big of a deal, you know, but
Not to mention the fact, though, that one could perceive that as a willingness to collaborate.
right.
So, and in many ways, I think that's why what could have ended up in the final cut of Godfather 3 is so interesting to me. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because, you know, we should start at the beginning, right? We really should, and kind of go through. So, and so the films themselves,
Yes.
Francis aside, the structures are deliberate. I love that they all follow a very similar structure. So there is a very keen Star Wars kind of reference in the original trilogy, and far as
It's like poetry.
doom, doom, doom.
It rhymes.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Hey.
Yeah, it's gonna. If we can make Jar Jar work,
Yeah.
you know, that's the because he's the crux of the whole thing. Okay.
It's kind of like I can see him saying that about Andy Garcia's character in the third one.
If we can make him work, the whole movie works because he's like the crux of the whole thing.
Which, for the most part, it did.
Yeah.
So the opening of the first one is that iconic scene of, you're gonna come to me with a favor, like that whole thing. I didn't expect the movie to open with that shit. Like you think that when you hear about it from the outside, you assume this is when, after all the characters are established, and this is like the meat of the piece. That was the assumption that I had made. No, sir. That is the beginning of the movie. They're like, this is your character establishment. And I'm like, fuck. This is so metal. I love it. And but the very first shot, I'm like, spoiler alert, I am probably going to find a way to get some piece of that monologue in as a sample on the record I'm working on. I will rewrite some lyrics and I'll make that fit, because there's some cool shit that's said there. Because the delivery is perfect. The dolly shot, which was computer controlled, which was really new at the time, is like this. The lighting, it's just it's a fucking mood, man. It is so good. And there he is, like, he's like sitting there doing his thing, and you're like, okay, I thought I was gonna laugh at him, but no, it makes total sense, because you've seen all the offshoots and the parodies and all this stuff. First of all those things make more sense to me now, and I want to go back and watch them. Secondly, it is so well done that it doesn't feel like a parody of itself after the fact, which is a danger of watching something that has been so seeped into culture.
Right.
I am so grateful that it holds up, given I have all this other context, right? Go through all this stuff, and then I find out about these characters that I know nothing about. And can you hear me?
Yeah. No, I was just
Okay.
I was messing with it's like Zoom looks great, but the capture is like it's missing like half the frames. But it's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's fine. Yeah. Like, I had no idea that Michael Corleone was in the Marines, which I was like, oh, that's cool, you know. And he's this reluctant gangster, and he's pushed into it, and the whole movie just kind of flows, and you see like the wisdom and the tact that Vito has after a lifetime of being this guy. Like, he's not just drunk on power like so many Dons would be, that you always see that in other films and other source material. This is a guy who is equal parts head of a family, a military, level tactician, and a great businessman. Like, the guy really knows what he's doing, and it's on display in full force. And immediately after this opening scene, we get to cut to like the first instance of like, oh, this is where this can go. Cool. So we get the horse head scene. I've seen so many things about this that reference this, and I'm like, all right, how hard is this going to hit? Because I know what's going to happen. Like, as soon as I saw the horse, I'm like, oh, I know it's coming. And it happened. And I was like, oh, you know, like I honestly want to sample his screaming because I think it's just like, it's just so good. Because he's like so proud of this horse, and you see, what the hell's his name? The Duvall character, just like, okay, yeah, all right, good enough. Cutting that horse's head off later, you know. You just got it, noted. And it hits really hard, and it's when you think about the context of it, like, give my buddy this part in this movie that you have admitted he's the right guy for, but you're holding a grudge because he fucked the lady you wanted to fuck. Like, oh darn. Like, look, I understand being in a position of power and leadership and having something like that. Like, well, not in my movie. Totally get it. However, don't be a dumbass. Like, if he's the right guy for the part, just swallow it and go. But now your horse is dead. Now what are you gonna do?
Khartoum, is that the Octavius? How's it going? Is that the name of the horse? Khartoum?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was the name of the horse.
I wouldn't have
deep cut, bro.
Wow,
no.
I would not have. Wow. So we've got some Godfather fans in here right now, so that's cool.
Killer.
So let me ask real quick, because since we're kind of going through the movie here, so you've got, you know, Duvall playing Tom Hagen, you've got Al Pacino playing Mikey. Playing Mike. You got James Caan playing Sonny or Santino.
Oh, I'm getting to Sonny. I'm getting to Sonny, bro.
Like, is there anything where you're sort of like, is there anything that's not working so far for you through this part of the movie? Or are you just kind of like in it?
For the most part, I'm in it. Like, the only things that kind of felt a little weird, but once I heard about the context for why it's there, it makes sense. Because I thought the whole thing with the enforcer guy, Luca Brasi. When I saw him like rehearsing his speech and everything, I'm like, okay, this is good character establishment, but this seems a bit early to focus so much on this guy. And then he comes in, does his thing, and I'm like, oh, he's sweet, I like him. And I'm like, and I remember thinking, like, I can't wait to see what this character does in the film. Well, then, like, 20 minutes later, after the horror, they off him. And I'm like, no, that's like, I was like, I like that guy too much. I was looking forward to seeing him through the whole series.
Yeah.
Because, again, that's one of the dangers of this, having this whole thing, knowing that exists. Yeah. And you fall in love with characters right away, and they're like, no, no, that guy. His death was brutal, bro. Like, they did a really good job. And they apparently, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, because I know you've heard it recently, but they put this makeup on him that when you put water on it, it turns it black. Yeah. So it's meant to, like, show like over time as moisture hits it, like he's actually dying, like he's being deprived of oxygen. I was like, I didn't really see it in the shot, like the lighting didn't really do it any favors. No. Or it was lost in the restoration, which is possible because I had to color grade the whole thing all over again. Watching that process on the special features was really cool. Like what they had to go through to make that happen. You know, we take digital transfers of film for granted, and I thought it was reprehensible that the original negatives for this film were gone. They had to like piece together shit from various prints and all this stuff, and I'm like, it's a crime. Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, in the 70s, well, even before that, there wasn't any
best picture at the time.
Yeah, but there wasn't any idea of any sort of restoration when it came to film.
Well, just preservation. Yeah. Right? Like just hang on, like put it in a hermetically sealed vault, and this is American history at this point. Right. They knew that then. So shame on you, Paramount, you narrow-minded fucks. I'm just gonna but like this, it so that was a good, you know, him dying was just like, oh, that was a big gut punch right away. I said, okay, well, you know, anything's up for grabs at this point. I have no idea where this movie's going, because thankfully I've avoided spoilers for freaking 43 years, bro.
Longer than that, 71 when this movie came out.
I've only been alive 43 years, Rob.
Oh, I get it. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. I get what you mean now. Sorry. I wasn't on the level, dude. I wasn't on the level.
It's all right. And I said over 43 years because in the womb, my dad could be like, yo, it was totally freaking Fredo, bro. You know? Just up against my mom's belly, like, Fredo's a bitch. You know? My dad probably wouldn't have said it quite that way. But,
hey,
you know. Yeah.
See,
and I don't know if he ever saw it either. To be honest
going back, one of the things, if you think about you're starting a movie, you're starting at the time he had no idea that it was going to be a series, but he's starting a movie, and the way that he does it is, I love the fact that it's not like, hey, this is Sonny and he's blah blah blah, right? Or this is Michael and he's blah blah blah. No, you show it through action and through.
It's all contextual character development.
Right.
Like, you learn by relation.
Right.
Like, the first time we meet Fredo, I have a different impression of him than what he would eventually become, which is a cool kind of a, like, they switcheroo it on you, because I think that's meant to be the case. Because they spend a lot of time showing, like, well, he's the older brother. Yeah, he got a little bit loose at the party, but he's clearly, like, the older brother. He's in the shit. Mike is not interested, what have you. And the way that he tells a story about how his father negotiates and how he's very separate from that is very telling of how reluctant he is to be a part of that, though he loves his family and he's as involved as he's willing to be. Later in the film, when Fredo is driving Vito around, when I saw that, I wanted to leap through the screen and choke him to death.
Well, I think that's the point. You're supposed to be
like,
angry
how,
at him.
like how freaking hard is it to hold a gun in your hand? You limp-wristed idiot. Like, come on, bro. That's your dad. Like, first of all, why'd you let him go to the orange stand by himself? First of all, if you're protecting him, you're supposed to protect him. Like, second of all, why wasn't there someone else in the car with you just for protection if you're just driving? Like, that makes no sense in any context, wartime or not, for that family. Like, you help that motherfucker out. Like, he's a badass, but he's not no kung fu star or nothing like that. Don isn't all out here in the streets going like, oh, like, well, that would be hilarious to see Marlon Brando like do a kung fu stance and make like the noise. Like, it would be so good. But they didn't do that, thank goodness. But so you have some bait and switch, like with the enforcer. What's his name?
Luca Brasi.
Luca Brasi. And then you have something similar with Fredo. So you have all these things. You would ask me if anything like kind of pulled me out of it. No, if anything, it drew me back in over and over again. Yeah. Anytime that I thought the movie was going to go one way, it went another, which also helped to kind of allay my fears of being able to be out of it and point at cliches and stuff. It really wasn't that. So thank goodness that Scorsese and Coppola are such different filmmakers, because otherwise it would have been horrible for me to watch. But again, these are different flavors of basically the same idea.
Yeah, and it's funny that, you know, we're having this discussion. You know, we had this. It was like Tuesday when I said, "Hey, let's do a show about this. Let's do this." Yeah. What's weird is yesterday on some website, it was on the top, the front page of the movies Reddit, the movies subreddit, was that Goodfellas is the greatest gangster film of all time. And of course, in the discussion, you've got all this, no, it's not, it's Godfather, and all this stuff. And then one person, because you had already told me the whole, Metallica Napalm Death thing. They said that the Godfather is classical music and Goodfellas is rock and roll.
True.
And
It's
I was
100%
like,
true.
that's also a really good comparison, because the Goodfellas is more interested to me in the flavor and the feeling of being in that era, and the characters
Right.
are almost, in a way,
Well,
they're not drawn as how do I say this? It's not.
Well,
It's like a deft move, the way that he
Right,
does.
the idea, I think, of Goodfellas. So Godfather is telling the story of these people, and it has to establish their relationships and tell their story. So whereas Goodfellas uses Henry Hill and his ilk to throw you into what would it be like to be a gangster.
Right.
What does that feel like? You know, it very much in the sense of if I had been in that situation and I were remembering all of this, these are the highlights. This is what I would remember out of that life. Right. And it glamorizes it in the same way that we have nostalgia for our past and so forth. Yep. We forget the shitty parts. We remember the good stuff, right? It's kind of like looking back at an old relationship or an old band or something like that, where you remember, like, man, that was great. But you forget about the part where, like, the bass player fucked your girlfriend in front of you and shit, or whatever. That never happened to me, by the way, but it happened to the guitar player. But that, you know, that's a whole thing. The point being that it's different, whereas The Godfather is like your grandfather sitting you down and telling you this story. It's almost like the Princess Bride of gangster films, where it just lays it out for you and tells you in excruciating detail, like, here's what happened. And Goodfellas is like, yo, it was so cool. So your drunk buddy telling you about, like, that time he went to Europe for a year. Right. And it was like, oh, dude, we did this, we did that. And he leaves out the part where he's, like, on the side of the road, like, clutching where his kidney used to be and shit. You know, leaves all that stuff out and just gives you all the highlights. We were fucking bitches doing cocaine and look at this money. You know, like, that was what Goodfellas was. And right. Casino, I find it to be a happy medium between the two in a very interesting way, where Casino is better at giving you a wider story of all these characters and developing them, but still in that grindcore kind of a look at this is so cool way. So it's the Casino is closer to Godfather. Casino to me is like Godfather 2 without the flashbacks, if Scorsese did it. That's how I look at Casino now. And it's a master stroke for him. It is probably the one film of Scorsese's in terms of his gangster stuff. He's done a bunch now at this point. It's the one that probably gets the least amount of love, and it's the most criminal. Like, that's a great freaking movie. Okay,
you're talking about Casino.
Yeah. Like, go back and watch it if you haven't in a while, because
it has been a while for me.
That might be Pesci's best performance, honestly, ever. And I loved Goodfellas, but he's a one-note pony in that film.
Yeah.
In Casino, he's got layers. He's Shrek in that movie, right? With a gun. Don't you ever go over my head again, you motherfucker, you. You know, that we used to quote that movie all the time on the road. You know, it became code. Quotes from Casino became code, because it's just such a great movie. And that's what's really neat about that. And I run into the same thing with introducing older music to people that listen to newer stuff. Like someone who listens to, like, Thy Art is Murder or Adal Rock or the newer, like, extreme stuff. And I show them old Napalm Death and Carcass and Emperor and stuff. And they're like, oh, okay. In other words, they suddenly understand this isn't the first thing of its kind. Here's all the little pieces. And these pieces are much more drawn out, and there's more to each of these ingredients, to this stew these people have created. So this is great if you want to sample it all, but here it is. So to me, the Godfather trilogy is very much that for the Scorsese films and the other, like, Sopranos and all this stuff that came after it. It kind of defined Another comparison. I'm going to keep going with this. It is the Night of the Living Dead as well. It establishes here's what a gangster movie's supposed to be. You know, they had like the cheesy black and white ones, and even in like the supplemental materials, they talk about like, yeah, they had to have this moral turn and this and that because they had to kill him at the end. So the character development wasn't as good. It was fun. It was like a Western, but with suits instead of, cowboy hats. And I get that. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to be truly indigenous, honest, and a direct approach. There was no need to Americanize it. There was no need to moralize it. This is the story of these people, for better or for worse. And they threw it at you.
And that's what I love about that whole series is it feels like a document of these people's lives. There's none of this, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if this happened? And you got this really kind of, where you're like, where did that come from? This feels like it's almost like you're peering into these people's lives. That's
exactly what it is.
It's so different.
And it's intoxicating in that way.
Yeah.
Like it's very, there are certain kinds of movies that lend themselves, for me, after a first viewing, just putting on and just kind of it being there like an old friend in the background.
Yep.
Godfather 1 and 2 are definitely that for sure. Godfather 3, I kind of can't look away because I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And Goodfellas, I got to be like, I love this movie so much. I got to get in there. But it is something that once you hook into these characters, it's warm and fuzzy to a certain degree. Yeah. Even if you don't agree with everything they do. So getting back to, Godfather 1, you see how, relatively early in the film, Vito gets kaboom, boom, boom. And we find out that, Fredo doesn't have any of his shit together. He's a piece of shit, and he stinks. And then they push that away, and they save that for the second part. And I'm like, when I saw it, I was like, well, what about Fredo? But then the second part comes in, and it's like, well, by the way, he really is a piece of shit. Let me show you why. It was really cool. So immediately, I immediately thought that was it, that Vito was dead. And I'm like, oh, man. Like, no. Like, I want to sit with this character more.
I fell in love with him immediately and didn't want to let go. Yeah.
No. And so then he's in the hospital, and I'm like, well, this can only go a few different ways. But I like how they didn't. So many movies will do this thing where like they'll shoot him. Okay. Let's keep going with comparisons, right? They didn't pull Chewbacca Rise of Skywalker shit.
Right.
Which they easily could have done. They drew out that tension of like, is he dead? Isn't he dead? But the whole time they're like, well, we don't know. And then you're like, no, he's fucking dead. Like I saw him. Like the motherfucker's dead. Like he got perforated. My man is Swiss cheese. Like we're done, right?
Okay, I just want to point out that I think that this might be the first time in history that Chewbacca has been compared to Vito Corleone. I'm just throwing that out there. So kudos to you, sir.
There's a reason you have me on the show, okay? There's a reason that I'm here. It's not just because I'm good for experiments, bro. Okay? Yeah. I have a way with the words.
In fact, I might have to tweet that later. It's like, you need to watch the replay because you need to know why Chewbacca is...
Do it, dude, because that'll get you some views, man. It's better. Hey, now imagine if you swap those roles for a second. Put Vito Corleone on the Millennium Falcon, like I'm not gonna punch you. Why always with the punching? Try something else.
It just reminds me
of Be a man.
The whole thing at the I think I've talked about it on here, but it's the little shot. It's like the audio from the set from Empire Strikes Back. And Peter Mayhew is yelling at Harrison Ford, "Where the hell have you been?" In that real Cockney accent. And it's like, oh man, they really missed out. They could have had Chewbacca be a Cockney Where the hell have you been? It's so funny.
I really think that they should do a supercut of all the footage they have off of the set with Peter Mayhew in that suit. Because that would be like...
He seems like he was really just... Well, I didn't meet him, but I saw him at one of these conventions, but he seemed like just a wonderful guy, you know?
Just an affable, genuine, compassionate man that really appreciated what life gave him, right? And in his later years, like, the dude was making some decent money on the festival circuit, like, you knew that. Convention circuit, pardon me. And power to him, right?
Heck yeah.
I'm glad he got to relive that role. And the guy they've got in there now, I just rewatched Solo this morning, albeit the Riff Tracks version, because I just wanted to see what they had to say. And by the way, it's a really good Riff Tracks. But I was like, it was hard because I was like, these are good, funny jokes, but I'm like, I really like Solo. But they had the same guy as Chewbacca, and I really like the way he does Chewbacca.
Yep.
When they take the training with Han Solo, he really gets to inhabit that role, and it was really, really good.
Yeah.
So
he's amazing. He's really good. I'm very proud that they found somebody that is willing to do his own stuff, but is also willing to pay tribute to the way that Peter Mayhew played him. It's great.
He's a little more animated than Peter was, in a good way. Like, you buy what he's selling a lot more, I think. And again, that has more to do with, well, he has a template that he can play from, whereas Peter was coming off the cuff. So, I prefer new Chewbacca to old Chewbacca, but that's mainly because of the context we find him in, because they're giving him space to chew up the scenery as that character,
right?
As well they should. I don't ever want to see the likes of a holiday special again, but I would like to see a more Chewie-centric movie. Like, what would be a cool series to do? They'll never do it, but how cool would it be to do a Forrest Gump style movie, or just a series where you just put Chewie in all of these historic Star Wars moments and just follow Chewie around for a bit? How hilarious would it be to do it Goodfellas style, where he narrates the whole thing with subtitles? And
See, the one that always used to make me the Chewbacca was the ooh. But anyway, there's the scene.
I can't do. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway,
better you than me.
The scene where and here we go. We're comparing Star Wars to Godfather. Here we go.
But we knew this was going to happen, bro.
Yeah, it's just it is
it's a thing, yeah.
But yeah, you can't really. I mean, I've got a lens, that I'm looking through.
You can't
but anyway,
avoid it, dude. Yeah.
The scene where Michael has sat down with the bad police guy and oh God, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Anyway,
it's not
the scene at the restaurant.
Can you put a pin in that for a second?
Yes.
Because if you want to talk about the scene, let's talk about it at length.
But wait.
Up to this,
I was doing the Chewbacca thing. That whole thing where they have the conversation and they're not speaking English, but you understand kind of what's going on. You could do that with a Chewie movie. If you did it correctly, you could have a conversation, no subtitles. You don't know what's actually being said, but you get it. And that's the whole thing about Lucas in general, is that he was trying to make the movies where even if you had the sound turned off, you could still follow what was going on. It's
because it's a visual. He was a very visual storyteller. You bet.
Yeah. So wouldn't that?
Absolutely.
I think that'd be really cool. Salazzo.
I could see
there
that.
He is. Thank you. Thank you, Octavius. But anyway.
Salazzo and McCluskey. So you find out that Vito's okay, which it was like, oh, cool. That provides some interesting story beats. And Mikey ends up at the hospital, which you're like, now as a son who's visited his father in the hospital when things were dire, I know the compulsion, right? But when you consider Mikey's, I'm going to call him Mikey. I'm sorry. He's always going to be Mikey to me. even though he earned Michael.
I'll allow
leave
it.
Mikey to me. Fine. So Mikey goes to the hospital. He had this. He was really had an aversion and kept the entire family at arm's length because he didn't want to go down that road. So him going to the hospital is a deliberate move. Like I think he made his decision right when he made the decision to go to the hospital. That's when he made the decision. Like, well, I can't stay away any longer. Like this is it. I'm family. Whether he realized it or not, I think that's when he made the switch. Not when he chose to protect his dad and move him, although that would be to the naked eye. If the sound were off, right, and you weren't really paying attention, that's when you think the choice was made. No, I think that was when he said he was going to go to the hospital. The second he was like, fuck this, I'm going. Because it just makes too much sense. So he goes there. All the guards are gone. The cops have like hauled him off, which I think was a brilliant move strategically. I'm like, oh, that's fucking smart, bro. And then he goes in there. And they're just like, you have to leave. I'm like, bitch. I'm gonna go. Bitch, are you for real? If you know that reference from, you know what I'm talking about. Oh shit. Bucky Wheatstraw, the guy who played that. Dolomite.
Oh, see, I didn't know that one.
Guy. Yeah, that's a. Yeah, look up Dolomite and look up like the history of that actor and that character and.
Don't tell me what to
dig
do.
yourself into that shit.
Okay.
Excuse me, we're here because of something you told me to do. You fuck. All right. Well, I'll turn this into that room versus, and I'll bounce the ball back at you, man. I'll do it. So he goes there, and there's like, you gotta leave and all this stuff, which I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, do you not realize this is a gangster? Do you not realize what's about to happen? Don't you know what's gonna happen? He's a gangster. Okay, wow, almost went full Seinfeld there for a second. Like, what's the deal with no God to the hospital? There should be God. Okay, all right. And he was turning into fucking William Shatner there. There's a man on the edge. Right. So, I'm trying, okay? You gotta let me come around to it, all right? Jesus. Here's why it's like Last Temptation of Christ. Not really. No, so he just snaps to and says, look, do you understand who my father is? He's gonna get killed. And I thought she was gonna put up more of a fight, and she's like, nah, fuck it, do no harm. So they pull him in, and I assume that it's going to be like a video game where he's going through the halls of the hospital, like killing motherfuckers. Like I thought that was going to be the thing. It felt like that's where it was going. Nope, Mikey's too smart for that shit. Baker shows up. I'm Enzo from the bakery, and I'm like, oh, that's a cute little callback.
For your father. For your father.
Your father. Enzo.
Why does he say it twice?
Because he wants to make sure he doesn't get shot or whatever. Like he was scared. And I think, oh, that's a cool callback. That's really cool. He's going to shoo him away, and he's going to figure out the next bit. Or he's going to hide, like, a gun in the bread or something, or whatever. Like, I don't know. I was, like, thinking, like, doof, 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 and he pulls out, Italian bread goes flying. No, not so much. But what he does is masterful. He goes down the stairs, and then he talks him through it. It's like, put your hand in your pocket like you've got a gun. It's going to be fine. And Enzo, to his credit, pulls that shit off. Like, I thought for sure he's going to, see his hand shaking in the pocket. The Jackson was like, nope. Had it down. He was like, I have to stay. If I ever want to see my bakery again, I got to stand still. And, so he does. He was the Luigi to Mikey's Mario. It was really cool. Cop pulls up. Where are the guards? Like, we hauled them away. Hooligans. Blah, 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 blah. And then he gets slugged. And I'm like, oh, no, they're going to go kill him. And then Duvall comes up and says, oh, by the way, these are all licensed, and you're going to have to answer the judge if you fuck around with this shit. So now there's guards. And Mikey pulled it off, and I'm like, oh, shit. It was like a new favorite song. I was like, this is so cool. And we're not even halfway through the movie yet. And the movie just popping. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen now. Like everything they subverted my expectations. Ryan Johnson, pay attention. It was really, it was great. And now we get to Sonny.
Now wait. Let's pause that right there. Before we get to Sonny, let's talk about that scene, because that's Octavia said the cuts of the stairway and the sound of the footsteps was great. The tension,
yes,
the way that one of the things that, like you had said, was that Mikey made the decision to join the family or to accept his role in the family when he chose to go to the hospital. I think it's when he realized that the guards were gone and he made that call. I think that's the time.
That's fair.
And then I love it's a very deliberate, it's one of those things that today I don't think this scene would have made it in the movie. These shots wouldn't have made it in the movie. Is the shot of
it feels like
of Enzo with the cigarette, and then Mikey takes the lighter, lights it, and he looks down and he's like, "Huh, I'm cool as a cucumber." That none of that crap bothered him. The mortal danger, and he was in it, and he was cool, calm, and collected. And to me, that's that one of those little character moments that of course, as a character whore, I love that. I love seeing that kind of.
I would argue that scene doesn't play without it, because it's not a matter of us realizing Mikey realizes it. It's it's showing us that, because you may not even realize it.
Yeah.
Or you may realize it and then be like, what the fuck? Because that self-awareness is such a big part of how Mikey makes this turn.
Right.
I think that there's no way that scene works without those shots.
But see, like today, to me, it seems like today, in today's world, it wouldn't have been something that they showed. It would have been something that he said or remarked.
Oh yeah, I mean, like,
you know what I mean? It's
what are you so scared for? You know, yeah.
It's one of those scenes that if you're not clued in, you sort of miss it. And today's world, it's so. I love the fact that everything is so subtle and everything is character driven, and it's
purposeful. There's not a wasted frame in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like, the pace is brisk, but only as brisk as it has to be. Like, he's constantly between second and third gear the whole time. Never goes all the way. Well, even the stings, like even stuff with like, I forgot his fucking name again. Luca
Brasi.
Luca. Yeah. Even his death could have been a quick cut. Could have been like and they could have cut away. Would have been sixth gear. Just kept it right in third. A little bit faster, but he made you understand. He's like, you're gonna follow this bitch all the way to the floor.
Yeah, it's you feel
you're
it.
You feel have a choice. You can't look away. So, but again, it's deliberate, right? There's a very conscious effort to explain visually and through character development how this is happening, why this is happening, and maybe even hint at where things are going to go.
Yeah.
Even though we had no reason to believe there'd be a Godfather 2 or 3 when that came out, in hindsight now, for me having watched it for the first time, did I break up a little bit?
No, it's some loud car outside. Anyway.
He was in fifth gear. But it knowing that there's a context to this, that there are 2 more movies, like it without necessarily, because he was so good at not doing callbacks, but keeping like the phrasing very similar,
like poetry.
It does kind of it all fits together in a very cool way. And you know, and seeing things like that whets the appetite, knowing you've got 2 more movies where you can develop all this shit. And so knowing that Mikey's going to make it through all 3 films, at least to get to the 3rd film anyway, didn't cheapen any of the tension for me. Because for all I know, he got his arm cut off. He's got a robot arm on the second one. I don't know. I don't know. It's possible. Weirder things have happened, right? I mean, Mario Puzo was a screenwriter on freaking Superman, for crying out loud. And now, knowing what I know about The Godfather, I go back and I'm like, wrong guy, bro. Like, not. I come from the planet Krypton. You know? I'm gonna give you the. No, I think like Superman now is a trash movie to me. It's complete trash. Like it wasted everything that it was given. Man, the only thing they had going for him was casting. Brando being the exception. I think he was the dumbest possible choice for that role. Just because like by that point. And knowing his backstory and how his shenanigans, if you will.
Yeah.
Nah. You know, and I feel like so much of what Puzo had originally wanted to write for that Superman film is gone. They maybe used a third of that script, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It was just a way to get that thing going. But whatever. So the cop comes up, poof, punches Mikey in the jaw, and they don't, and they really stayed on the injury of that, and they wired Al's mouth shut, and they really played Realistic. It up to where like it's really smart with that. Also hints at where Duvall's character is going to end up in the second one, because you have to think about this. Mikey's perspective now on everyone has changed because it has to. He has to, now that he's allowing all the light in, he's opened the blinds and he's getting hit with it, he has to pay attention to all this stuff. So you can't tell me then that the value of his adopted brother doing what he did in that situation didn't directly influence his decisions later on as far as who was going to be his right hand. Because it's like, no, you're too good at this shit, and we need that on a whim. You need plausible deniability and shit. Like, it's fucking smart. So in that moment, like, you see where Mikey's like, that's more important. Like, I can deal with all this stuff, but I need him to be able to do that shit and be untouchable. No pun intended. So it's cool because it all in a really profound way. So they get all that stuff done, and then if memory serves, he goes home next.
Michael does.
But
is that what you mean?
I mean, does Vito go home? Vito goes home before. No, Vito goes home after all of the shit goes down, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's sidebar Sonny for a second, because there's a whole arc in there which is really cool, and only James Caan could have played that character the way that it was played. That's a role tailor-made for that guy, because he wants to be loud, angry, abrasive, and misogynistic, and boy, he gets a chance to do all that shit. He gets to be racist, bigoted, misogynist, loud, have curly hair, all things that he's good at.
It's
and
so
it was a typecasting, because then if you fast forward to, like, for me, the role that introduced me to James Caan, Alien Nation.
Wow.
He's basically Sonny if he was a cop, is what that character is. He just took Sonny and made him a cop. That's it. That's all it was. He just flipped that one little thing. And it's the same freaking character if you think about it. Because he's angry in the whole thing all the time. Dude, it's so worth it. It's such a good watch, dude. It is so criminally underrated and not available on Blu-ray. Damn it! Oh, I love that movie. I have it digitally because of reasons. But it's a good movie.
Hey, Yoshi's here. What's up, Yoshi?
Yo, what's up, Yoshi?
It's weird. You kind of cut up a little bit there, so it was like. It's funny.
I like your pixels, buddy. You keep slinging in pixels, bro.
Yeah.
Oof.
For sure.
Yes. Now, if we had Yoshi when they made The Godfather, oh, I'm just saying, it would have been awesome. However, so Sonny, it's interesting. You don't see it in the beginning of the film, but when you see the turn, the rest makes sense. So, like, for the first act of the film, Sonny is on a chain.
Uh-oh.
The whole time.
Okay.
And he's barking, and then Vito's like, shut up! But it's an implied thing. You don't realize how much Sonny's really holding back. It's clear there's something under the surface, but you're not sure what that is. Then Vito goes down, and he's like, oh! He just goes off. And I want to kill all these motherfuckers! You know, and I think that, you know, a lot of people talk about the inspiration of in gangster and gangsta culture from Vito. I would argue Sonny's more influential. Or that it's two sides of a coin. You got Sonny and Vito because in the gangster rap hip hop category, you've got the cool whatever blah 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 yo. Then you've got the I'm gonna kill you motherfucker. You know, like that's basically all there is. You've got Sonny's and Vito's, and nothing in between.
Yeah, and you've got Scarface as well. I mean, I think that's
yeah,
big,
but I would say that
even further back.
Well, with Scarface, even Scarface had a really. Who the hell directed that? Was
Brian De Palma.
Scorsese, was it?
Brian De Palma.
Okay, that makes sense. All right.
But it's funny how they're all friends. They all like went to the same classes, and you know, American Zoetrope was all of those guys. You know, Brian De Palma, you know, took a crack at the crawl for Star Wars, and George Lucas helped with the editing of this movie, and you know, of course, Martin Scorsese's mom is in Godfather 3. I mean, it's so weird how they're all of these amazing filmmakers are all like in the same group. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. And it's and I've always been conscious of that from the Lucas and Spielberg perspective, and Scorsese too. Because I'm very familiar with those directors. I love those directors, and now having this other side of it is very. And I've seen Scarface, but it's been years.
Yeah,
that's the next one I got to go back and really analyze. But I'm familiar with it. I just need to really like dig into it and stuff. And I believe there's a Scarface PS2 game I probably need to check out. And there's also a Godfather one I got to check out because those are on the list. I'm buying those motherfuckers. Because like I was like I'm all in. So with Sonny, you know, obviously he's mad. He's upset about his dad. And so I'm with him for a bit. I'm like, I'm with you. Like, kill these motherfuckers. You know, I'm there. I'm right fucking there. But then he starts like not listening to Duvall. What is that character's name again?
Hagen. Tom Hagen.
Hagen. Hagen-Dazs ice cream. Got it. Hagen. Because he is smooth like ice cream, man. Like he's when all else fails, you pull out the Hagen-Dazs, and he's like, I feel better. And I can't, for the life of me, understand, you know, outside looking in, like why how Hagen's not able to reel him in, like whether that's a character development beat for him, or if it's just meant to show how far Sonny is just gone. He's just gone. Like he's like, I have to do this. You're not going to stop me, but I need you to support me, because that's the vibe you get. Is like somebody's like, look, I appreciate you, but look, I'm going to do this either way. I need you to help me do it. This is happening, which is the vibe he's given off. And I would have been interested to see more illustration of Hagen's frustration with that. Because you know that there's no one in this situation more qualified to get the lay of the land than him. And it's really interesting. So you do see it later when he gets outed from the main business. He's like, you need me, dumbass. Like, because now he's had it happen to him twice at that point. So I wonder if there's stuff on the cutting room floor or like got pulled from the. Sonny did need a wartime consigliere. That's why I haven't said that shit.
Consigliere?
Lieutenant. I'm saying lieutenant, goddamn.
It's not really a lieutenant.
No, it's not.
I think it's weird that something that you just said got me thinking, and I hadn't really considered it. That in a way, the three boys, right? Sonny, Michael, Fredo, are parts. They're almost like
Vito.
pieces of Vito's like main
overall brain. You bet.
Yeah. So it's almost, you've got the hothead, you've got the cool, calm, and collected, you got the family guy.
Right.
Because Fredo's good with the family. And it's like all of those pieces are missing from the other two, if you think about it.
Right. I will say that Mike grew into some of the Sonny characteristics and was desperate to get the Fredo stuff.
Right. And he could never...
And he was slowly coming around to that in 3, if you think about it. He's very much him. He's very much him in 1. Learns to adopt the Sonny stuff in 2. And 3's going for that Fredo angle. Mainly because, spoilers, Fredo's not there.
Yeah.
So, like, and that's cool. If you think about his character development that way, like you could easily make that argument.
It's weird. I'd never consciously made that connection. I guess it's because I never analyzed it like this. You know, this is...
I mean, we're analyzing the heck out of it. We're going full probe on this one.
Yeah.
You know, we're going in, man. We're scoping this motherfucker.
It's crazy when you think about it, though. It's like, I never really thought about it that way, but it's kind of genius.
Yeah.
But
whether
then what's
or not that
Connie?
was conscious. What's Connie?
Yeah.
His sister? The flying monkey in a dress, basically.
Yeah, for the first 2, it really, all the way up until the end of 2, she's kind of an annoying character.
No, I'd argue all the way through the series she's an annoying ass character.
Oh, see, I love her in 3, and I
like what
appreciate her at the end of 2.
characterization. I appreciate what the character. You couldn't tell a story without a Connie character. You could not. However, I reserve the right to be like, yo, Rocky, come get your bitch. I'm done. I'm done with this bitch.
Uh-oh. I'm still on. Jim's frozen. One frame a minute is where we're at. Let's give Jim a second to get caught up here. Turn that crank, Jim. Yeah, we might have to, I might have to reconnect with him. The last thing we were talking about is Connie. Remember that? Let's see. Yeah. Let's see if he gets back in here. He says, I just blue screened. Back in a sec. Okay. So then let's do this. Let's go over to that until we get Jim back in here. So yeah. I know it was Jim. He broke my he broke my heart. Broke my love. Or maybe that's you meant to give the hey. It's okay. But yeah, yeah, while he gets back in here, let's I think with Connie, of course that's Francis Ford Coppola's sister, right? So it's kind of one of those weird yeah, broke my heart. That was one of those weird things where I wonder if people at the time had you know, if they said anything about that, the fact that, you know, Francis Ford Coppola's sister is in it, and she's kind of, I mean, she I think her, as she got older, she became a better actress, but I don't know if she got the same crap, you know, that that Sophia had in Godfather 3. Kind of an interesting. I'm not old enough to remember. Because I didn't start watching it. Let's see. I started watching The Godfather. I guess I had to be around 19 or 20. Because it's just not, if you think about it, that's not the kind of movie that you as a kid, that you're like, oh, I can't wait to watch this. You almost have to be older and have the appreciation for it. Let me just. Ah! Hi. Sorry. I'm just telling Jim that all's good. Reconnect when you can. All that kind of stuff. I really enjoy how her character finally kind of. It's a weird thing because I feel like The Godfather in itself is sort of strangely misogynistic, but it's one of those things where you go, okay, well, number one, that's the time period that we're in. We're in the the 40s and 50s, right? And I mean, gosh, I don't know if you guys have seen the Battleship game, the old Battleship game where dad and his son are playing Battleship, and in the background you've got mom and the daughter washing dishes and smiling at like, oh, look at the boys having fun while we're over here doing the dishes. I mean, it's a weird thing, but it is a real thing. It is history. So in a way it kind of makes sense, but at the same time it's kind of like I kind of like to hear, Mama Corleone's kind of point of view. We never really get it. So it's one of those things. I feel like it's a sort of a missed opportunity in a way. You could argue that's not this story, and that's fine. But at the same time, there's a lot of facets to this story that could have been there. And where we are in the movie. And I kind of want to wait until Jim gets back because I want to talk about the time where everybody kind of goes, okay, Michael's not just an observer. He's not just the kid brother. Kid's got ideas and he's thinking bigger picture than all of us. Because that's what happens in that meeting, And I think that's the most. His internal turning point is when he goes in there and realizes that he's got to take control and get his dad hidden. So it's but speaking of that whole scene, going back to the hospital scene for a second, the cuts of the stairway and the sound of the footsteps, the Hitchcockian kind of why did my brain just go blank? Suspense. Holy crap. Okay, so the suspense in that whole scene is big thanks to Francis Ford Coppola. Says in the commentary, George Lucas helped him find all of these quick shots, before and after takes, where the camera's rolling, but the action hasn't happened yet. And they took those scenes, those quick shots of a hallway with nobody in it, to kind of give the sort of this feeling of frantic. Okay, where's the danger coming from? Very, very smart. Very, it's just beautiful. That movie. I think that's the great thing about commentaries. If you're not a commentary person, I think the best thing about commentaries is that you're engaging with what's being said. And what that does is it takes you out of the movie because you've already seen it, right? So you don't need to pay attention really to the movie. What I pay attention more is to the stuff in the background, the way that things are framed, the way that things are shot, the focal length, just like if there's somebody in the background, there's a lot of things that really kind of come into play, and you pay attention more to the filmmaking aspect of it instead of the storytelling aspect. which is really, if you think about it, that's what makes movies amazing. Or at least the good movies, is that they can be telling a story, but they're also doing a lot of technical stuff while they're doing that. And when it all comes together and everything works together in perfect harmony, that's when you get these special movies like The Godfather. You've got this amazing storytelling going on, but it's also technically just like, wow, beautifully shot. The only thing that I will say is, and I'm not exactly sure if it's a kind of a product of the time, or if it was a conscious decision, but everything is sepia toned in Godfathers 1 and 2. And I just find it distracting. In a way, it almost makes it feel like, oh, you're watching a historical record. In a way, you're watching old footage. But for me, it's just a little annoying to, like, it's a constant thing. Just like, there's brown everywhere. But then again, the Paramount logo, intentionally, like the new Paramount logo that they show at the beginning of the movies, they intentionally put a sepia tone filter on it. So it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe that's just a conscious thing. I just don't know if it adds anything to it. In fact, for me, it's kind of distracting. But yeah, let's see what's going on here. Yeah, he still hasn't reconnected. There's a thing about The Godfather that, and it's not something that I've mentioned yet. For me, when I used to have cable and I'd be flipping channels and The Godfather one of them would be on. Of course, to me, Godfather 3 is very, very, it's distinct. It's got its own look and feel. And because, of course, the actors are older, that's obvious which movie it is. But for Godfather 1 and 2, it's hard for me to figure that out. Unless it's the, the Robert De Niro Godfather 2 scenes, I have a hard time figuring out which movie we're in. Because to me, it all blends in together in a sort of, I don't know, kind of a beautiful way. Because, I don't know, it just feels like, it feels like one big story to me. One and 2 feel like one big story. In fact, in the 80s, they put together this thing called the Godfather Saga, and they showed it on TV. And what it was they re-edited both of those movies chronologically. So, of course, all the Robert De Niro stuff, or the young Vito stuff, I should say, all of that stuff takes place at the beginning, and it goes through it chronologically. And then we get into the beginning of The Godfather all the way to the Michael-focused scenes in Godfather 2. And that's how it's edited. And of course there was extra scenes that were put in and stuff like that. And most of those scenes, if you buy the Blu-rays or the digital versions on like iTunes or your provider of choice, the special features include a bunch of deleted scenes, but these were edited back into this movie chronologically. And I have watched it once, but it was a long time ago. And what I actually wanted to do for, I guess, this show, in a way, not that this was like this big plan and we'd been planning this for weeks. No, it was literally, let's talk about The Godfather because it's fun. I wanted to try to track that down and find it and watch that Godfather Saga. Well, apparently back, I guess it was 2 years ago, they put it on HBO and they called it The Godfather Epic. Was it 2 years ago? 4 years ago? Whenever it was. Doesn't matter. It's not available now. So yeah, it was kind of disappointing that I wanted to see if I could track down a copy of that, whether streaming or buy it or digital or something, but they don't have it. They didn't make it available to purchase right now. But you can, if you want to, you can track down the I guess, the VHS versions, and they're kind of expensive. So they're kind of collector's items. I will never willingly watch a VHS again. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I've got the VHS Star Wars up there, but I'm never gonna watch it again. It's really there because it's Star Wars. It's like a collector's item. But I feel like The Godfather is the second most. I might be lying. I was gonna say it's the second most purchased thing. VHS, Blu-ray, DVD, 4K, whatever you want to call it. But I honestly think that I think I might have purchased Indiana Jones more. Kind of hard to say. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's we're still giving Jim some time to get back on there. Good. Get it out of your system. What? What did I Oh. Yeah, I was already done talking about Connie. I just said, hey, I'm just talking about Connie. And he said, good, get it out of your system. I don't know. I just feel like from that perspective, I mean, it is obvious, right? It is obvious it's all about the boys. You know, it's not about the, you know, what the women are going through until really toward the end of Godfather 2, where the big ball drops. It's kind of weird. It's like the Godfather series is one of those few movies that surprises just about everyone. You know, because like when the things happen, Jim's back. When the things happen, they happen in a way that makes it feel real. And so you don't see this stuff coming, which is awesome. So my wife is one of those that sees things coming a mile away, you know, no matter what it is. She's like, I can look over and kind of, and she's got, yeah, I've already figured out this movie or this TV show. I know who did it, whatever. But that is one of those that just doesn't seem to, she didn't see anything coming in these movies. I guess is a testament to the way it's edited, the way that it feels. Or it's so captivating that you don't realize. Shows that Jim is connecting to audio, but he's not connected yet. So we'll see how this goes. Weird how there's more frames on this scene than the zoom.
I got it.
Actually, oh,
that was my fault.
Jim.
That was my fault. Hey.
Are you back?
Hello. Yes. Hello. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Oh, wait. Video is not there yet? There we go.
I hadn't started it yet.
There you go.
Sorry, guys. I had a full-blown blue screen. I'm not sure why. I have a suspicion as to why it happened. I'm checking on that right now. Yeah.
Russian hackers?
Pending update. Motherfucker.
That kind of reminds me of, I wonder if because I did not check this morning.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. That's on,
yeah.
I'm just,
yeah. So yeah, in fact.
So The Godfather's good, huh?
Oh,
no,
yeah.
we were, okay, so we were talking about the whole Sonny and the whole idea of, we were right around that time, that meeting directly when Michael comes home. That's where we were.
Right. And essentially, we were also discussing the whole concept of the 3 shades of Mikey. Also being the 3 shades of Vito and all that stuff. We're talking about Sonny's rise to power. He wants to go kill everybody and starts down that road and then gets headed off at the pass by Mikey, basically. Because everything shifts when, he saves Vito at the hospital and, Sonny's still in charge. But then Mikey's like, There's an easier way. We don't have to kill everybody. We just got to kill 2 guys. I can do that. And they'll never see it coming. They won't see me coming, Kevin. Like, as soon as he said that, I'm like, he did the callback to that in Devil's Advocate, and now I know. I didn't know it at the time. They won't see me coming. You got to be small. Think big. You know, it's quite good.
Talk about somebody being... I mean, look, Al Pacino is enjoyable. Any Al Pacino is fun.
Yes.
But
yes.
I have to say I'm not a huge fan. As he's gotten older, it's almost like he's become a parody of himself.
Well, yeah, but that's why it's fun.
Yeah, but it's like Heat. Heat is just so much fun, but oh my gosh, it's so overacted. You know?
Well, what about Stand-Up Guys? That one he does with Christopher Walken and
I saw that once and I
Alan
wasn't.
Arkin?
Yeah, I wasn't. Same
if
with
you went into
De Niro,
expecting.
yes. And hey, Leon,
So
what's going on?
Hey, Leon. Hello, Leon. See, that movie to me, it's just a fun little story. It's just a neat little thing. And it was cool to see those guys interacting in that way. Yeah, I love it. Watch it again, taking all the expectations off the table. Just be like, I just want to watch a movie about these 2 guys. And when you do it like that, it's fun. But if you go into it going, these are like these 2 icons, which is what you did, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
like,
that's
wow,
exactly.
what are they going to do with Walken and Pacino? And then it's like, it's a buddy movie about Pacino getting laid, basically. It's fun. But the thing is, if you take it as it comes for what it is, man, it's a fun little ride. Yeah. You know, it's good. And it's got a lot of heart. Watch it again. Stand-Up Guys. And also, for those of you at home, it's super cheap. Like, you can walk into like any Best Buy or whatever, you get $5. It's worth your $5. It's fun. It's nice. It'll tug at your heartstrings. It'll make you laugh because Walken is in fine form. He's not parodying himself, and he does an interesting Italian accent. It's not quite there, but it's funny. Get it? It's really good. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Now I want to watch it again. But Sonny,
yes.
and they devise this whole plan to kill the corrupt cop guy and narcotics man. Which I got to be honest, like when this guy first comes into the film, I thought Vito was going to go for it, especially the way that Haagen-Dazs was like throwing this up there. I'm like, oh, well, if Hagen's into it and he's a lawyer, he's like, yo, we got to get into the coke business. He's like, but I thought he was going to come around, especially when they have the sit down and the way he's treating this guy. He's treating him with a lot of respect. He's being very personable. And the way that he was like, fuck no, I'm not going to sell you shit, was really classy. Like, he's like, you're not going to get any trouble from me. I think that it's a good idea. I think you're going to make a lot of money. I wish you a lot of luck. It's not for me. Like, oozing class and professionalism. Like, I would have been like, did he just break up with me? Like, what was this? You know, like,
because I feel good about it, and that's weird.
Like it's fine. It's fine though. That's weird, you know. But I love that scene because it was just like, this is a turn for that character. You get yet another shade of Vito in there, and what you needed to see, you needed to be able to see him.
He's got standards.
Like, really, yeah. And I was convinced of that in the beginning of the film, but for whatever reason, it just, I still thought, despite that, he was going to go with it because he wanted to believe in the future of the thing. On one hand, I was really glad that he did it, and I was like, oh, that would have been an interesting thing. But then I'm like, well, think about what happened to Henry Hill, Jim. Think of Henry. Think of Henry. You do too much of that, your mind turned to mush. So it was cool. And the idea that that cat would then turn around and try to muscle him out, I thought was a shit move, and he got what was coming to him. In fact, he got off easy. They both got off fucking easy, in my opinion. But the way that they do it was so stone cold and perfect, like so clever, you know. And they're showing like, all right, so this gun, it's going to be untraceable, this and that, da da da, you know, point this, doing that, da da da. We'll put it in the toilet, and I'm like, and you know, as a student of these films, I'm like, well, that seems pretty obvious. But like the two guys, the police chief and the narcotics guy, you know,
Solazzo.
Solazzo. They're
Solozzo?
so arrogant
Solazzo?
and so
I don't know.
me. Solazzo. Whatever. But they're so arrogant. They think they've got this all figured out. They think they have all the cards. Doesn't even occur, especially the cop. He's like, I frisk a million fucking punks. Like, he doesn't have anything.
Yep.
Fine. Let me eat my fucking food. Like, the second he says that, I'm like, oh, you're going to get it, bro. You're not going to like it. And I'm convinced he's going to walk out of the bathroom and just go bang, bang, because it's a perfect opportunity, in my opinion. Shoot fucking Solazzo in the back of the head and then just move the gun that way and shoot him and leave. And if I were writing the script, that's what would have happened. And I would have missed the opportunity for this whole, like, I know I'm going to shoot him. When do I do it? Where he's just like, because you can see he's seething. He's trying his best not to just be like,
yeah, and his eyes are darting.
My dad, even as he's shooting him, he's trying to keep from being like, losing his cool. And it is a masterful performance where, like, there's a million ways you could have played that tension, and Pacino's just barely under the surface. Like, I was afraid he was going to turn into the Hulk. I thought his eyes were going to turn green like half the time. He's just like, and then he pulls the gun out. Blam, blam, blam. And Cop Boy, whoever played him, someone needs to teach him what getting shot in the head actually does to you. That did take me out of the movie for a split second, because I'm like, no, it's not what it does at all. It's like, bing, boom. That's how that works on some level. But just the way he was emoting was not in line with a gunshot wound to the head. Beyond that, I was good. It was really good. And then as he turns and walks away, I'm sitting here at this desk. I'm watching it on that screen, and I'm going, drop the gun, Mikey. Drop the fucking gun, you idiot. Drop the... Oh. He drops the gun. I was like, oh, okay. It's fine. Not gonna go to jail. Gonna vomit. It's fine. So, and they turn around and they're like, we're flying you to Italy. He's like, you what? Like, you can't be here? We'll take the heat. How bad's it gonna be? Bad. And then they fly him to Italy, and I'm like, okay. All right.
Sicily.
And that's part of Italy to me. I'm sorry. I know it's an island off of Italy. It's Italy. It's Italy. Okay? Right?
Okay, hey.
But I get it in the caste class system of Italians, Sicilians, because it's not a separate country, dude. They're together, right?
I don't know.
Sicily. All right, chat, look that up. Is Sicily a sovereign nation or not? I'm going to say no.
But anyway.
So he goes to Sicily. And in the commentary, one of the few pieces of things that I got out of it, like in terms of like really interesting little footnotes aside from just like the general stories, which are always fun, was that it was when he went to Italy, it was very common to have the intermissions in the films at the time for something that long. And that was where the intermission was to go, which would have made sense. But the head of Paramount at the time said, no, this is too intense. Don't let him off the hook. Let him stay there. Let him sit. And I'm like, ooh, look at you actually having good studio feedback. The one time of all the studio interferences I've heard of, that actually was a good idea. And it was good. Because it would have been easy to be like, whoo, that was a ride. And then to come back into it and then have to build it back up. He's like, no, leave him hanging. Fuck him. And it was good. It was really cool. But I will say that there's a reason that scene is so revered. It is a reason that it's so lauded. And it wasn't for the reasons that I assumed that it would be. I assumed it would be because of the brutality and the starkness of like the murder, for example, which was pretty up there. No, it was for Pacino's performance pre-shot. Yep. Never saw it coming. And I was like, oh man, that's really good. Like, ooh, all right, cool. And because then, as soon as he comes out of the bathroom, it's just a concept of, well, when's he gonna do it? And then he takes that perfect shot and just throws it away. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like if you're gonna shoot him, like now is the time. When they're barely paying attention to you, they're convinced you got nothing, and one of them's got his back turned to you. Everyone's got a mouthful of nachi or whatever the hell he was eating. But then he sits down, which is a ballsy move. Like he wanted to look him in the eye when it happened. Like that's you find out he's just like because he was building up to it. I'm building up to it, Kevin. I'm building up to it. Yeah. Prize fight, round 20.
It was.
Yeah, it was really cool. And it's in that moment when that's all over and he goes to Italy, aka Sicily. That you realize that this movie's far from over. You know, because if it had been a 3-hour movie at that point, it would have. It felt like it could have been, because the time drags in these films, but in a good way. It's a deliberate, like, slow burn, despite it feeling like it has brisk pacing, because it really does. And then I'm like, well, there's a lot of movie left. Like, where are they going with this? Like, those are your villains of the piece. Like, what is this? Like, now what? Huh? And then that's this is about Mikey. Like, the second he arrives there, I'm like, this whole movie's about fucking Mikey. Oh. And that's when it became clear, and then now I'm like, ooh, now I love these movies. Like, whatever comes next, like, I'm in, like, Flynn, like, that was the moment where, because I was, on one hand, I wanted to have Vito for the whole first film as the main guy, but having that and wanting that made me worry about part 2 being pale in comparison because it focused on Mikey, and the third one was just a cash grab, which to a certain degree in the third film was kind of true. Yeah. Although they did a lot for a crash cab, if you will, a crash cab. But he goes to Sicily, and he's got these shotgun guys follow him around, which is pretty cool. And cold as ice, sees this girl, was like, that one. I want that one, Kevin.
Octavius, man, he just keeps throwing out the quotes, too.
To say women are more dangerous than shotguns. And I can't really do a quote because I can't speak Italian, so thanks for that, Octavius. Appreciate that. You're not helping me here. Okay. All right? I love you. That doesn't help. Don't give me Italian quotes because I can't do it. I can't even fake the accent. I end up sounding like a bad Super Mario Brothers Saturday show.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Just like that.
So, right. And I thought, oh, man. Because now his girl's back home waiting on him. But to be fair, she was on the fence to begin with. Like, she was like, I'm out. Like, I can't. Like, no. Like, she was trying to, like, be supportive. But it was as soon as like shit went down, like you could tell, like that's bad. It's not going to work. And fast forwarding to when he comes back and he marries her. To me, that was him going, I don't want to date anymore. You're an easy mark. I'll take you. It'll be fine. Because I never got the sense, that I get the sense that he was really in love with her.
I do at
She
the
was
beginning.
I think that there was potential there. I think that he cared about her. I think he always cared about her and had affection for her, but never in love. He viewed his offshoot of the family, the kids being the exception, but mainly his wife. She was a means to an end. She was a means to have the kids, which is what he wanted. Couldn't give two shits about her if it came down to it, because he had the kids and he had the rest of the family. His behavior shows that, whether he realizes it or not. Like all of his "I love you" lip service from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he didn't realize it. And on the other hand, his Sicilian wife, that would have been something.
Well,
that would have been the thing, which is hilarious because, and here's why I'm making this comparison. I have a point, I promise.
okay.
He has this long extended courtship with Diane Keaton. I'm Batman. Sorry, I always associate those two. I'm Batman, motherfucker. So they have this long courtship, and there's no substance there at all. The courtship with his Sicilian wife, who's Antonia, something that sounds like Anthony, but it's female.
Apollonia.
Apollonia, like Apollo. Yo, Apollo, I'm gonna fight the Russian. Got it. She's Carl Weathers, his wife in Sicily.
Okay.
Apollo, right? Yeah.
So I guess Marlon Brando is Burgess Meredith. Is kind
You
of.
can't win, Rock.
Yeah.
He's Mickey. No, I don't know.
Right. Totally.
But this
You're
is
gonna
too weird.
eat lightning and crap the thunder.
That'd be hilarious. And then put Mickey, not Burgess Meredith, but Mickey in the role of the Don. Be a man. It'd be crazy. Anyway, so, but his courtship with Apollino is really short, but seems to have way more sincerity to it.
Yes.
Because it was a bright fire that burned quick, and just when he's like, wow, this could really work. Like, this is good. This feels right. She's like, check it out. I'm gonna start the car. No. Well, shit.
Yeah.
Damn it. So it makes sense. I think in that moment, his ability to love in that way died too. He left his heart in a car. So when he comes home and he's, everything else, and over a year has passed, he's like, fine, I'll marry the boring one. She's got good hips, whatever. I don't care. I'm getting to that age. I want kids. I need something, and I'm not gonna join, gangster OkCupid, right? Gangster Tinder. Like it wasn't a thing. Like when's you gonna date? When's you gonna find time to meet some girl, right? That isn't already in the thing, right? So, to me, like that immediately was apparent to me that him trying so Diane Keaton's character is the embodiment of his inability to have a life outside of the family. She is the personification of that inability to be normal, okay? And his marriage to Apollina is symbolic and personification of him embracing his destiny 100%. Because when he was gone and came back, he could have backed away. He still had that opportunity if he wanted it. But the second that he laid eyes on that girl, he's in. Like Flynn, for life, in the family, I'm a gangster, that's it. That's who I want to live that life with. And that would have been a very different series of movies. Because you take how powerful and strategic and tenacious that Mikey is as the Godfather. Now, if you were to add that added layer of passion to it and true love into the mix, that guy would live forever. Because that guy would have had it all. And the tragedy of this character is that he did, for a brief moment, he had it all, and in a flash, it was gone. And the rest of the series is him desperately reaching at everything in his life to gain some facsimile of what he felt when he was with her.
Yeah. And it was all the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Yeah.
Yes.
But
I mean,
it's weird though, because I feel like, I mean, look, I think you're, yes, but
I know I'm right. You don't have to tell me.
for me, well, see, for me, I feel like it happened earlier. That switch, because if you think about it, before he goes to the hospital, he has dinner with Diane Keaton,
right?
And it's very standoffish, and it's because he's already starting to make that change, and he's going, I don't know if this is going to work.
So here's my point with that though.
Yeah.
Pre-Sicily, it's a rational career choice. He's embracing his family and his destiny there. Apollina was the last, that's when his heart became in it. Mm-hmm. So like, this was already done over here, pre-Sicily. Goes to Sicily, his heart becomes in it. He's in the life, but then his heart dies. So all he's left with is the career end of it. So every decision, including marrying her, not Apollina, but is Diane Keaton. What's her name?
Kay?
Kay, thank you. Kay, that's easier. Kay for Keaton. Ding. So like with Kay, that was, like I said, it was a very cold decision. When I was a teenager, I asked my father why he picked my mother. And he said, I knew she'd be a good mother to my children. That was the first thing that came out of his mouth. Their love was always obvious to me. So that was never a question. But I found it interesting that he would say that was the defining thing for him, which led me to believe that he had loved before, which I found very interesting. Never got insight on it, but it was a rational, logical decision that also had love with it. But I always, in the back of my head, I think about that when I see characters like Mikey making this decision of like, well, this is the right move. Like I can make this work. I can Tetris this shit together, right? And that's what that was, because he didn't have the time or the ability to court anyone else. He basically pressed a few buttons and she was in. Kicking and screaming, but she was in. And he was able to get the rest of the things he needed. He needed a bloodline. Because he had a responsibility at this point. He had to have kids. Had to. There's no such thing as the impotent gangster. I'm sure there is. But, he's a Don. He had to, boink, right. And then, wham, that had to happen. And in the absence of the ability to... Right. But that's my point.
Yeah.
So, given his complete inability to connect with another human being in that way, you're like, well, I could take this, I could dust this off the shelf and it'll work. Like, I can make that work. I can fake this shit for the next 30 years. Even to himself, clearly. So they get married, that's the whole thing. And then to see, Häagen-Dazs goes, like, you're out. And although, were I not paying such close attention, it would have been easy to write that off as him being cold and just saying, like, no, I want Dad. Because he wants to be closer. Like, no, it's a calculated move. Like, he wants Hagen to do things in the way that he did for him at the hospital. Like, that's more valuable to me. I need this. And it also, he knows that having Vito as his consigliere, hey, I said it right, will help his transition. in a big bad way because no one's gonna fuck with him at that point. He's got the best of all worlds. He's got all the pieces. He's playing chess, Mikey. Mikey's a master chess player, and he's got all the pieces where he wants to go, and he's watching everything else, and he's moving, and he's going, and it's beautiful.
Now,
beautiful.
Let's pause Mikey's story.
And we have to. I love it.
And then Santino.
Yeah, Santino. So,
first of all, did you see that coming?
Him dying?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. What I saw coming was a power struggle between the two of them leading through the end of the film, which would have been cool. It would have been, and I was looking forward to a scene where Sonny goes, "You're better at this than I am. I want you to take over. You're the right man for the job." And then they have like this thing, and then he would get off. That's what I thought would happen. Is like they would reconcile, and then he's gone. Which would have been just as tragic, if not more so, honestly. Yeah. I forget the context as far as like at what point they were in their relationship. But it was after he came back, though, right?
Mm-mm. No, because he's still over there. Yeah, he's still over there, and that's why they.
That's why they brought him back. That's right. Because yeah. So they kill off Sonny, and that's when the whole thing with Abilena happens because they're making a move to get everybody. They're trying to do to the Corleones what like Mikey later does to the Five Fathers. He's like, no, bing, 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 fucking metal as shit. But so yeah, he goes, and it was brutal. And I remember seeing and hearing on the commentary and all this other stuff that like Colin was talking about how like they mentioned in passing that they never put more squibs on somebody before. And you can see the pain on his face because squibs they're not painless, man. They hurt. It's like getting hit with paintballs really bad or BBs and stuff as they go off, or worse, depending upon the load that's in that bag. And so as getting shot the fuck up can go, that was really good. And I hope that was one take for James Caan's sake, because ouch.
That's one of those where I could feel the tension.
Yeah.
I remember the first time watching this, like vividly, because I remember thinking, okay, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
But he's gonna get out of it. Like for sure, he's gonna get out of it.
Like,
and then
how's he gonna do it?
You see the squibs going off, and you're like, okay, but he's still okay. And then he gets out, and it's just the like that, and you're like, I just remember going, like I can't believe they did that. And it's weird how, if you think about it, can you think of any death like that in a movie?
Yes.
I mean, 50 years has passed, and we still haven't seen a death that intense.
I disagree.
I can't think of one. What?
When I say it, you're gonna get mad.
Why? Why would I be mad?
Murphy in RoboCop.
Okay, yeah.
The emotional stakes weren't as high, but in terms of sheer intensity,
I guess for me, it's more the realism of it. I guess maybe that's what I mean. I felt like that was so real, like it was so intense.
Well,
but no,
visceral.
You're right. Murphy, yeah, that is definitely, wow.
Very similar. Yeah. I mean, think about it. If we're comparing these two, right?
So basically, we need a Robo Santino, is what you're trying to say. Why? Anyway, go ahead.
Dead or alive, we're having meatballs. But like, contextually, if you want to look at the realism and shit, Murphy was wearing like double-plated body armor, like futuristic body armor that could take a lot. Like one or two of those shots, he'd have been fine. But he had 5 or 6 shotguns at close range, and firing in the same places over and over again. Because it shredded Because first they shot his hand off. That's bad enough, which looked fucking real. And then they start shooting him at close range, which hurts. And then you see the armor just start to disintegrate, and he's going. Like the internal bleeding starts, and he's getting worse, and you can just see it. He's like, ah. And then he falls over, and there's a chance he might make it. And then Boddiker's like, the fun's over. Boom! Bang! And I thought, God, that must have hurt. Even though he maybe couldn't have felt it, but fuck me, just poof. That was intense. And I felt the same feelings watching Sonny, because I'm like, ow, 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 oh, he's dead, he's gone, it's fine, oh, God, The difference being that the emotional context is very different. Because Sonny's a character we've lived with for 2 hours, and then now this happens. Whereas Murphy, like, but we barely knew you. Your family, though. Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry. My name's Saul Rosenberg, and I'm sad. The
office guy in the Ed 209 scene was pretty brutal, too.
Yeah, but that one I would say was very cartoony by comparison. If we're talking about actual intensity for the character, like here's a character is throwaway, and then they're like, by the way, he's trash. Like, okay, he served his purpose, it's cool. So yeah, it's more brutal, but in terms of visceral, realistic, like I buy this, and they're making you watch the whole thing for a character development purpose. I think they're comparable in that sense. I think it's just an emotional context difference. If you'd had an hour more with Murphy, arguably it could be without peer. I think the only thing separating the two in terms of impact emotionally is just that. You just have less time with this character.
Right.
I think that's it. I would also argue that Murphy is more likable as a character than Sonny is. I understand Sonny. I empathize with Sonny, but I don't like him very much. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
I don't like the way he does things, and I was, although not happy to see him go in that way, I was happy to see that chair relinquished and for Mikey to take the mantle. He was clearly the right person for that, right? But you didn't want it to happen that way because you knew Mikey was going to take over. Even on first watching, it was clear that was where it was going. So it was horrible. I was like, no, not your brother, And we were spared, thankfully. You killed my brother. You tried to kill my father. You killed my wife. Like, they could have easily written that in and gotten away with it.
Today's world, yes.
Like, well,
there would have had to been a face-off.
Fast forward to Godfather Part 2. In my house, where my wife sleeps and my kids, children play with their toys. Like, you could have had that moment in the first one as well. But they didn't do that, and it was smart. He was like, okay. Because without saying a word, there's a look on his face for the rest of that movie that goes, you killed my one true love. You took a shot at my dad. He was never the same after that. You took him away from me in many ways. You took my big brother. I'm going to fucking get all you motherfuckers. Like, I'm done. I'm getting mad just thinking about it. Like, I'm going there, like...
Yeah, and the it's funny because you've got that table scene, right? With all the guys.
Yeah.
And the whole the Tatalia and Barzini and you're all the guys. And then I love that conversation in the car. So simple. Such a simple, and it could be done with all, like you say, all of this big emotion. And, the way Tatalia's a pimp. It's like, he never could have outfought Santino. But I didn't know until this day that Barzini all along. And you're like, wait, whoa. Okay. Oh.
You just figured it out, yeah.
I love it. It's so good. And it's one of those things where when he talks, you almost want to lean in because he's talking so softly. And you're like, what's going on? And then you like, I just, dude, that movie is I think that's the thing that I like about it more than any other gangster movie, whatever. I totally understand Goodfellas and Casino and The Sopranos even, I mean, all of them. But it's the understatement. It's the realistic, just the resignation. Yes. It's so much more real to me.
That he's earned the right to be as understated as he wants to be.
I love that so much.
And the thing is, I draw a parallel to that and the Paulie character in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Very similar, except Paulie was a lower level Don. You know, he was like, you know, in terms of his power, he was a neighborhood level Don, you know, county level, if you will, not, you know, statewide. Like essentially the Don Don Corleone was like, because he was controlling that whole northeastern seaboard. That was his thing. You know, whereas the Paulie character's just one rung below that, right? And but there's a palpable and necessary difference in the way that they did things. But they, very similar. They reached a certain point and they don't have to say a word if they don't want to. Say everything with their eyes. Whereas Paulie relied more on the quiet intensity. Whereas Vito relies upon this interminable wait. What's he going to do? You don't know. You look at Paulie and you know exactly what he's thinking.
Yeah.
And that's by design. That's what he's there. That's his bag, baby. Vito's like, you're not going to know what I'm thinking until I tell you. And I'll tell you when I fucking feel like it. You understand that, you mooly? That's Vito.
I love there's little things that stick out, and sometimes I don't think about them right away, but then when you're kind of thinking about the scene, you're like, I love the if he should get shot by a police officer, or if he should get struck by lightning, I'm gonna blame some of the people in this room, and it's just that's hit as far as he's gonna blow up, and there's an intensity there that you're like, wow.
Because he's trying to say, it's like, look, we're good. However, you know,
it's so
if anything happens, we're done.
Yeah.
But he says it in such a classy way that he's making a really morbid threat in the most respectful way you possibly could. He says, I will kill all of you. But he said it so nice. He was so nice about it. He was so, hey, I'm with you 100%. But
yeah.
caveat, subparagraph C is
yeah.
like, I'm going to go looking. I'm going to kill all you Ben Franklin motherfuckers with your lightning bolts. It was really cool. And it gave you that last little sting. You get that last little taste of Vito, that last little bit. And then the rest of the movie is just boom. Fast forwarding just a bit.
Yeah.
I thought that his death scene was beautifully written until I realized that over half of it was improv. Because he was supposed to just be sitting there and poof, like that was what was supposed to happen. The kid was supposed to not realize, go back, and he's dead. AKA the last shot of Godfather 3 with fuck you, Coppola. Studio interference and no interference. That's it. He just falls out of his chair. Get out of town. Suck my cock. Bullshit. Get out of here with that shit. I know that's not what he wanted. Whoever's idea that was needs their cock ripped off and put into a fucking shredder. I'm sorry. That's bullshit. That was so dumb. Like, this is how you end the whole series? Come the fuck on. Anyway, that was what's supposed to happen in Godfather 1 to Vito. But instead, the kid who's playing his grandson, it would have been his grandson, is playing around and running around and having a great time with Marlon. And so they're running around and having a great time. The cameras are still rolling. And then just because, like, well, we're already here, it makes way more sense that he would have a an episode while running around with the kid. Like that makes way more sense and has a much higher emotional impact to it, I find. Because it's like, oh, his last act was to connect with his grandson, and now he's done. And the kid doesn't realize it because he's a dumb kid actor that doesn't know how to react to shit. But it was, because on one hand, I was out of it for a split second. I'm like, oh, that kid's a shit actor. Because he wasn't like, grandpa, like none of that. But it made it all the more tragic at the same time. Because little kids at that age are like that. They don't get it. They think you're playing. And so, conflicting emotions there, but it works really well.
I love that scene. It's great.
Yeah, it's really good. Although there is one small aspect of that scene that I'm like, ugh. Because when he is dead, the grandkid sprays fucking pesticide on him. I'm like, oh, insult to injury. Like, what the fuck? Oh my god!
I didn't realize that, Octavius.
I didn't know that either. That's pretty cool. So the kid who played the grandson, his older brother played Michael's son in Godfather.
Now,
I'm in like Flynn.
I mean, let's keep in mind here that this is $6.5 million in 1971, which is not a huge budget, and they shot
a lot of money then too.
They shot this around 60 days.
Yeah.
When you think about that,
it's a lot of shots, dude. And they also had to go to Sicily for some of it too.
Think about the way Marlon Brando looks in the first shot, in his first scene, and his last scene. This is a towering achievement in any age. But it's, you look at that,
he was
and
like my age. He was my age when he did the film too. That's the funny part.
And and Al Pacino was what, 30?
If that.
I think he was like 30. Yeah. And it's just, the more you start to break things down, there's an appreciation that just starts to like, at least me, it just kind of like all the realizations.
Well, we've talked about it before with Max von Sydow and how old he looked in Conan the Barbarian, and also again as Ming in Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
And I at that time thought he was just an older actor. He was young. Yeah. He was virile. He was in his late 30s at that point. Which was amazing. To think about.
You think about all of them.
And look at like The Exorcist. Like like those three movies put together, like you just assume the guy's old. And he's not. Same thing with Brando in this one, although he was older, past his prime per se. Well, this was like the last. Well, past his prime. Think about the era. Hollywood, in Hollywood terms, once you hit 40, at that time it was kind of like whatever.
Yeah.
Like we'll Gene Hackman you into freaking Superman if you're lucky. You know, come on, kid, you're losing your hair. Speaking of which, you're telling me Lex Luthor has a wig and he picks a thinning wig? I don't think so. Just saying. I'm just saying.
I love Gene Hackman in those movies, though.
Oh, me too. Me too. Australia. This is one of my favorite lines. What do you want? Australia.
See, I think my favorite is actually in 2.
Same.
Did you see how they fell into their trap? the way he does that, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, the laugh is good. It was
so
a really good
funny.
laugh.
And yeah, Ian McDiarmid was 35 during Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah. And it to me, it really pays off in the prequel trilogy in terms of his age, because it worked out really well. Because you buy all of that more because of a 35-year-old man. He's thinner, and he's able to do the. And to a lesser degree, in his turn in Rise of Skywalker, it makes sense because he's older, decrepit. It worked. It really worked out well for the character, honestly.
Right.
But Ian McDiarmid, he's a theater guy. There aren't enough movies with that dude in it. There's not enough. There's just not enough. There's not enough. But I'm glad
funny.
we had him that way.
It's so funny because did you ever see the movie Dragon Slayer, 1981?
Yes. Years ago, but yes.
Okay, see, that's one of those where that's my first real memory of him, because I didn't know who he was in Return of the Jedi. But he's the priest.
In there?
Yeah, he's the unclean beast, get thee down. And then the dragon flames him.
Because it's been like since the 80s since I saw it.
Oh yeah.
I saw it on TV.
Yeah, he's so young. I think it's available on Amazon Prime, I think. Dragon Slayer.
I think you're available on Amazon Prime, Rob. I'm just saying.
Okay then. But no, I've always loved that movie because I love the design of the dragon.
Me too.
To me, I don't think there's a better looking dragon ever.
I'd argue that.
What's that?
I'd argue that there's an updated homage to that design in Reign of Fire.
Yeah,
very similar. Very similar.
Reign of Fire is so. I
love that movie.
I always joked about the whole. You see the trailers and Matthew McConaughey jumps off with the axe all in slow motion, and it's so awesome. And then in the movie, it's like, and then dragon just flies away, and you're like.
But I think I liked that aspect of it because I was like, ooh, that was like the coolest shot in the trailer, and he's like, gulp.
Yeah, it was just
because he wasn't, But the thing is, the third act of that film kind of let it down a little bit, not a lot, because the overall concept was cool. Because you have the full circle, like he's the one that discovered
I need to watch that again.
This thing. It's a perfect Saturday afternoon movie, or Sunday. Like to me, there's like Saturday afternoon / Sunday morning movies, and then there's anytime movies, and then there's like darkened room, glass of wine, there's beer movies, like they're all there. But Reign of Fire was just a motherfucker. I saw it in the theater. It was great. My memories of seeing that in the theater we were in was kind of run down, and it smelled of cat piss. So the whole movie, you're like, yeah, and you're breathing, you're like, ew. So it took you out of it a little bit. But the movie itself was fun, just fun. It wasn't anything more than it had to be, right? But there's that party that goes, I want to see this. I just want the whole movie to be about the dragons. Kind of like how I am with kaiju movies. Like, take all the humans out of it. Just give me monsters going at it. Like, give me that for like 9 hours. I'll piss my pants and I won't care. But if you have to put dragons in a post-apocalyptic film where the dragons are the reason the apocalypse happened, and you have to make it somewhat plausible, they did it. I was like, I believe in dragons now. Like, they're real, sure. Because they're like,
I need to watch
even
it.
And the expository dialogue is fun because they talk about how dragons breathe fire, and it makes perfect biological sense. All of it. All the characters are well thought out. Great delivery of stuff. Christian Bale's a little over the top. Matthew McConaughey is way more over the top. But they're both subdued when they have to be, and there's this thing. It's fun. It's really fun. And come on. Them acting out Star Wars for children in like a little children's theater thing and then saying they made it up. How cool. Like, it's perfect. It was awesome. It's a great movie. Watch it again. You will at least enjoy yourself. It's a fun little ride. You don't have to worry about the lore. You don't have to worry about a saga or like the sequel that flopped on direct-to-video. It just sits on the shelf, and it's exactly what it needs to be. It tells a cool story, and it gets the hell out. It's great. Reign of Fire.
Okay.
Love
You've
it.
sold me.
I'm good at that. But I sold you on rewatching Flash Gordon. You hated it, so that's fine.
Yeah,
it's cool though.
It's just like Dune, the David Lynch Dune.
I tried to watch Dune when I was a kid. Didn't make it through. Have never had any interest to go back to the source material or the film ever again. I hear this new Dune is supposed to be really good. I don't care at all.
See,
however, if Dune fans come back and say this new film is exactly what they want it to be, I will watch it and I will give it a chance. I don't see that happening.
I'll just say this. This is all I'll say, because I was not a fan of the movie. Yes. Yeah. I was not a fan of the movie. But I saw that there was a shell of something that could have been good in the right
whatever.
So
sure.
when I saw that Denis Villeneuve was doing the new Dune, I was like, I'm a fan of Denis. I'm gonna, you know what? Let's just read Dune. And I've been reading Dune. I'm about 70% into it.
Okay.
I love it.
Cool.
I love it. I think it's got those, because I mean, of course, it came in the 60s. It's got the elements of Star Wars. You can see where Star Wars got some ideas. You can see where this got some ideas. It's very, I just like it. I really like it. And then when I saw the trailer for Dune, I was like, okay, wow, he's really doing justice to what I am reading right now. So the deal is the whole deal is like Dune is supposed to be, or the movies, this is only the first half of the first book. And there's like 20 something books, which I don't know if I'm going to have that kind of time to go into all that. But
No,
I'm enjoying
like,
my ride through the first book. That's all
I know I don't have it in me for that, unless there's actually a good arc. Because I'm like Harry Potter, I tapped out after the third movie. Never touched the books. Don't give a shit. And boy, in today's day and age, does that put me in a really good position in pop culture. So I'm like, no, never got into it. I don't get the appeal, and the author is a piece of shit. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, I get to justify this gigantic chip on my shoulder about Harry Potter. Like for example, if you go to a dating site or social media, someone will make a big deal about which house they belong to. I'm a Hufflepuff. I'm a this and that. I'm a... And I'm just like, okay. Cool, bro. Or sis, whatever. I never latched onto it. Like, I thought the first two films were like really, they were cute. They certainly told an amazing story, and from all accounts they were well adapted. And the third film was pretty good too. It took a different tone. It was neat. But that's all I needed. I didn't need the same story over and over and over again. Like, oh wait, let me guess, at the end Harry figures it out and everything's fine. Which you could make the same argument for Marvel films and James Bond films and Star Wars movies.
No, and I totally get what you're saying, but see, like, I was the kind of the opposite. I remember the first two movies, I was kind of like, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
and then the third movie,
exactly
the third movie infected my brain, and it's because of Alfonso Cuarón. I loved his take on that world, and it made me want more. So then I immediately started getting into the books, and I read 4, and I think 5 hadn't come out yet at the time. So I went ahead and read book 4, and book 4 ends with a holy crap, okay. You know what I mean? So yeah. I was hooked after that. And I did read the whole thing, and what I love about it's kind of like, it's the same thing that I hear about the Dark Tower, but for some reason the Dark Tower I can't get into, the Stephen King.
Same.
I just can't get into it. But what I love about it is that there's something that, like, this little thing that's dropped in book 2, and you're like, I don't really understand that, but we're moving on. Okay, no big thing. And then they explain it way over in book 6, and you're like, oh, you've been building up to this whole time. Whoa! And then you start seeing all of these weird connections. And for me, it was, look, and I understand the whole J.K. Rowling controversy and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But all I can say is, at the time, it was the most rewarding reading experience I'd ever had with a series.
Well, it's the same thing that I deal with like Louis C.K.'s comedy and Bill Cosby's comedy.
Yeah.
To a much larger degree with Bill Cosby's comedy, because horrible monster of a man. Condone nothing of what he did, and I'd punch him in the fucking throat if I ever met him. For what he did to those people, and also to what his actions ultimately did for what I consider to be one of the greatest influences on my sense of humor of all time. It makes me feel like I did that stuff. Because much as I am loath to say it, those albums are still fucking funny, and I still like them. I still enjoy them, and I hate myself for it. You know, same thing with bands that have like certain agendas and shit. Where the music, I'm like, man, this is so good, but they're pieces of shit. You know, thankfully, Slipknot, as an example, like Slipknot has not aged well, so thank goodness I don't like them aesthetically or as people. but there's other bands where it's like the music is still really good, and you got Cosby and you got CK. Although CK, I would argue, is growing into a more well-rounded person and could be forgiven on some level in some way. There's still something of his humanity left, whereas Bill Cosby's a fucking demon. I don't give a shit. I hope he dies painfully when the time comes, because he deserves every last second of it, because he had way too much time of freedom and effluence, given what he was systemically doing over and over and
was
over
given
again.
Years of opportunity to change. And never did.
Yes, and he just put this front up the whole time. And with regard to J.K. Rowling, I would argue that I don't think she's ever going to get out of this. I think that she is who she is, and that's a shame for the fan base that has grown around her work. It has tarnished the work irrevocably, but I'm glad that something good came out of that brain. You know, for what it is.
Well,
I feel more for the people that fell in love with that universe than anything.
All I can say about that is that I've, for the longest time, had it's very easy for me to separate someone's work, whether they're an actor, director, whatever. It's very easy for me to separate that work from the person themselves. Just like on a smaller level, like I don't give a crap that Tom Cruise believes in an alien that's going to come down, and I don't care. It doesn't affect my enjoyment of his movies. But then there's levels of that. There's if you're depending on the way which aisle side of the aisle you sit on, George Clooney might piss you off, or
that's fair. You
know what I mean? There's all of those, which is kind of something I talked about in the last show. Which, hey, but it's like these ways that we separate ourselves from others, and I think, there's no way that I could understand where J.K. Rowling is coming from. I don't know what she's been through. I don't know what she actually knows, because there's a lot of people that probably have an opinion of this whole issue, but don't know the actual science behind it. And I think that's where...
We could make the same argument about like the whole thing we were talking about vaping last time I was on, where there's a lot of ignorance surrounding it and stuff like that.
Yes.
And I think that some of the people that have the most polarizing arguments tend to be the least educated on certain subjects. And I think Rowling just doesn't understand... It has no empathy for others, and has made a decision and just kind of is towing that line. Much like certain people... on both sides of the political aisle, they do the same thing, where they fail to have empathy for the other side. They don't want to understand the other opinion, and instead just push against it for the sake of, well, it's not what I think, therefore it's wrong. And you'll find that even on things like the discussions we're having about film and pop culture, there are people within those sects of culture that are like, well, no, Superman's better, Batman's better, and you'll see that shit all the time.
It's weird, right? It's just like what I was talking about. We were talking about
want to have a discussion, right? They want to have a discussion, but they don't want to engage in the discussion. They want to say their piece and have no understanding or empathy for the other person's point of view, because Monster Island forbid you expand your cranium a little bit, okay? For those of you at home that don't know, I have my own little religion based around Godzilla, and I will take things and so Monster Island is heaven for me. So heaven forbid, Monster Island forbid. So there you go. Little thing you know about me now.
It's weird that what you just touched on. It's like they want everything to be a mic drop. Yeah. And they want to be able to walk off and hear the that's what they want. Yeah. But life isn't that simple,
Not everyone's a hunter-gatherer.
And not everything can be explained in 240 characters is what I was trying to say in the last... you know what I mean?
And because I keep interrupting you.
Right. But I think it's weird because... I don't know. And Bucho and I briefly discussed this. It's this tribal nature kind of wired into our DNA, and it's like it's such a. And all I was trying to say on the last show is that maybe every now and then we should step back and realize how many similarities we have instead of how many differences, and maybe the world would be a better place if we could open our minds to the idea that, and this factors into the way I live my life too.
No, I hear some kid outside. I wasn't sure if I was hearing it in my mic or what.
But it's like the way that I live my life is I live my life according to data and science, which may piss off a lot of people, but it's like I look at the available data and then try to make a decision. I don't make a decision based off of how many likes I'm going to get on Twitter. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's the whole thing. And then the whole, it's almost like we've been building to something, because I've been talking about mental shortcuts on this show, about how you can make a decision and later on you just know where you stand on the issue. You don't remember how you got to it. And sometimes by analyzing how you arrive to a decision can help you be have an open mind about what decision you're talking about. And you're like, wait a minute,
Rob. Water.
What?
Be water.
Yes. Yeah. But it's weird. It's like you can take some of those, just like, the be water thing, be like water, is you can take some of those elements that are meant to be more of like, oh, well, this is how you fight, or this is how whatever, and you can apply them to your life and to logic and reason, and you can start to see these patterns everywhere, and you're like, huh.
Well, it goes back to Bruce Lee's thing about like his line in Enter the Dragon, I said emotional content, not anger. It's like there's a difference. And I think that's very indicative of the structure of debate, or a lack thereof, that we have in current Western culture, where people just will not yield enough to consider that an opinion other than theirs might have just as much validity, even if they don't agree with it. An opinion can be extremely valid as a perspective, even if you don't agree with it, because it's an opinion. It's not objective. It's not fact. It's not set in stone.
Right.
And neither should you. As human beings, as biological constructs, we are designed to evolve over time, on a smaller scale as individuals, but as a species over time as well. And we fail to realize our responsibility to the species a lot of times, I feel.
But
you don't have to be a damn scholar. Yeah, you don't have to be a scholar. You don't have to be the smartest dude or dudette in the world. Just take your piece of the world and do as much as you can with it. Like, explore it. Granted, there are people out there that all they want to do is punch the time card doing something they enjoy, which a lot of people do. They want to go home and binge a Netflix thing and kiss their kid or their wife or their dog or whatever and have a peanut butter sandwich and go to bed. And that's fine. If that's all you want to do, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. My perspective is that that's not enough for me. So there are many of the people in those positions that will turn around and say, well, because you do this other thing, I don't approve of that. I don't recognize why that's viable for you. Therefore, I am against that. I don't see the point of being on Twitch and watching it. Why, when you could play a video game? But video games are bad for you anyway. You spend all this time, you get nothing done. I'm gonna go over here and watch Netflix for 16 hours. And there's an inherent hypocrisy in this comparison of us versus them. It's always a separation, whether it's a tribal thing like Bucho was saying, or it's something just, which I think is more likely, is that we have bred a culture of insecure people, regardless of their opinion. And if people would just learn to look inward and be at peace with themselves enough to be confident, like, this is how I really feel. The current state of the sense of individuality, a sense of identity that it exists in most individuals in Western culture, is akin to what what I would call the crisis of faith of a Catholic coming out of the 60s and 70s that went into the 80s and beyond, where there was a question of, does God exist or not? I've been taught this one thing and I'm unsure of myself. Therefore, I'm going to cling to it without actually exploring that belief or why I have that belief. And now in the 80s, we have the satanic panic and this war against like Dungeons and Dragons because, well, this, I can cling to this. Like, this is telling me that my life has meaning. Like, my fear of mortality has purpose. That, on a grander scale, speaks to our cultural need to be right. I have a fear of not being a valid individual with any identity. Therefore, anything outside of what I think is comfortable is wrong, because if I accept that I can be wrong, I accept that I might be an invalid identity and my psyche can't handle it.
That's beautifully said. And it's like everybody's wearing lead shoes when they should be wearing.
Oh God, yeah.
When everybody should be wearing, springy cartoon shoes and be able to, change your mind. But think about this: some of the most successful companies in the world think beyond the next 2 quarters. They have to think ahead.
Right.
They have to. But it's weird how a lot of companies have failed recently, and not just because of COVID, but just recently in general, because they failed to look past the next couple of quarters or whatever. And it's this short-sighted idea that you have to be right. And it's like, you know what? We might do what might look like the wrong thing right now, because in a year's time, it's going to pay off. Well, in a way, I feel like that's what it's filtered into every aspect of our lives.
There's an allegory here in one of the other things we were going to talk about, which is the shift to this next generation of gaming. PS4 and the Xbox One, Microsoft and Sony 7 years ago were like, digital gaming is the future. And we were like, fuck no, we don't want it. We don't want it. Okay, you're not ready. That's cool. And they backed off a little bit, but they made it available, slowly adopted it over time. And now, with this new generation of consoles coming out, now, instead of it being a forced upon idea, they learned their lesson. And they're like, you have a choice. If you want discs, you can have them. They're still here. But we're going to give you digital versions of these consoles up front so you can be closer to your PC brethren. And that's fine. You can do that if you want to. If you want a slightly less powered console, you have that option too. In the case of Xbox, like, you have room to maneuver. It's not a reaction. It's okay, we need to ease these fuckers into it. I will tell you that beyond a shadow of a doubt, next generation, when it comes out, no disk drives. It's going to be gone. It'll be over. Right. Unless there's a way that they feel that physical media is still profitable in a meaningful way. Which by then, I think when you raise a whole other generation of kids on all digital, that much further, it's not going to happen. Which is a shame.
You're saying what, 6 or 7 years of
from now? Yeah.
So I would think. I mean, like, look at like Jay. I know Jay is fighting against the dying of the light, on the physical media. And his
Billy is too. Yeah.
And both of them. But I mean, Jay in particular has been saying that one of the reasons why he believes that it's going to continue is because of the lack of good internet speeds, across the. And I agree with that. But I think
I would agree with
6 or 7 years from now, that number is going to be so small.
Yeah.
I definitely think this is the last time.
So I think that what will probably happen, the last gasp, will be you get a digital version of it, and if you opt to, you can get an external physical drive. I think that's what's going to happen, because it'll save them money on manufacture in a big way, and it'll
because they only need to make one model.
Yeah. Force adoption in one direction, in that sense. Because I really do feel that. As much as I admire and enjoy the convenience of digital delivery, And the reason that I'm okay with it is because so many games, and I'm saying gaming specifically, they're not designed to be played offline in the physical form for the rest of eternity anymore. Like, a lot of them are online, and you have these interactions that are eventually going to go away. In those contexts, I'm fine, because it is meant to be a finite thing. It will have a beginning, middle, and end, and that'll be the end of it, and that's fine. But for games where I can just pop it in and play it, I don't have to have an internet connection, I still want the physical thing. So the physical media may not go away anytime soon, but I think that there's going to be, we're inching towards it. And this current thing is a big leap, because they tried to be innovative 7 years ago, and we're like, we're not ready for this shit. And to their credit, they're like, well, okay, how do we ease these motherfuckers into it? Because we don't want to be printing these discs forever. Which I understand. They want full control of these properties, which I understand. With film, I have a much harder stance on, because of what limitations it has, as well as my attachment to certain things. And I wonder if I really apply that to gaming, how I would feel. Like, for example, like using Destiny as the example, and I've talked about this before, where the original game had a certain state that it was in. The economies worked a certain way. Your abilities had a certain tuning to them. And my only way to prove that, other than recorded gameplay footage, is through the strategy guide that I have that shows all of that thing, and here's how this works.
Right.
And I own those guides because it's a snapshot of this is how it started. I don't have the ability, with any physical copy even, and I have them all, to go back and put in the disc and be like, ooh, this was what it was like when I can never go back with these games now. You don't have that option in that way, which for me bred that acceptance of like, okay, well, if it's not possible, I have to accept this portion of it, because it's not going to change, no matter how much I scream and holler. Which bled into other types of games. I'm like, well, like indie games and stuff, I'm like, it's fine. Although with like Limited Run and other companies like that, they're printing physical copies of those games so that you will always have it forever. And that's awesome. So I think there will always be a market for it. There will always be a context for it and an outlet for it.
But it's definitely becoming more and more of a niche thing.
It really is. And whether or not they will continue to give us the means to do that is the question.
Well, I'll tell you this. The one thing that gives me a lot of hope for all of it, really, I mean, you can, this is mostly a gaming thing, but this is, I can see this very easily translating over to some sort of movie thing, is, look at how the emulation scene on the internet has really been able to help preserve some of those things, but also give you ways to play it even if you don't have the system anymore. Like, yes, there's a gray area, piracy, all that kind of stuff. I get that. But the idea that, just like I have a physical copy of The Godfather, but then I can just run in there and plug it at, perfect digital quality off of iTunes. Yeah. Yes, there's there's less bit rate, so blah. I get that, yes. Right. But for the most part, I've got my Blu-ray, but I don't have to play this. I can play it digitally on my TV in there without having to worry about discs or any of that stuff. So to me, the emulation is the same way.
Right. And so there's a certain, no matter what size Blu-ray you have, although I believe I believe they're dual layer Blu-rays, which would lead me to, in the way that the fact that each disc has just the movie on it, I would hope and like to believe that the reason that that's done is because there's as little compression as possible on the presentation of that film, of each film. And it does show, because it's a beautiful transfer. And I don't see any artifacts and like that, and I look for that crap because I'm like that. To the point where I projected because what I do is I watch it through my PS4 that's captured in OBS, and then I just do a screen projector. but I blew up the projector to all 4 screens to get really close and be like, is it in there? And it's clean, right? But you're never going to completely avoid compression. There's no film equivalent of FLAC where it's completely lossless, right? MKV comes close,
but you're still only getting what the disc can provide,
right? So until they come across a format that is able to go lossless in a digital format, so if they come up with that, that would then change the game when it comes to streaming, because then if you have a file size that's comparable, if you're able to do where it is something you can actually manipulate and work with, you'll be able to put it on discs. It'll be cheaper to do, and then the streaming will catch up. But then that becomes that weird catch-22 where like one begets the other's demise in a way.
And I think somebody did sort of a like a comparison of, like, you know, we keep talking, you hear about 1080p and 4K and Ultra HD and, you know, all this stuff.
Well, in the commentary for Godfather,
huh?
Well, yeah, that's in the supplementary materials for the Godfather, actually. So they actually talk about this during their talk about the restoration process. So this is a great way to bring us back in. So they're talking about how the 35 millimeter frame. It was good. I see what you did there. I totally see it, dude. Whether you meant to do it or not, it worked for us. So they're saying the frame hold. They said it's somewhere between 1080 and 4K. So it's like a 35 or like 5 somewhere in there, where so it's not quite 4K, but it's in the middle between the two.
Right.
On leaning towards the side of 4K, which tells me that 4K is as close as it's going to get to being perfect. But then you go into like newer films being shot at that level, and then from here, like the sensors only get more and more crazy. But I would argue that as you move beyond 4K, you move beyond certain levels of artistic ability to emote and express.
You mean like 24 frames per second?
Dude, I would happily watch a film at 120.
Did you ever watch The Hobbit? I mean, I know The Hobbit's, you know, kind of whatever, but did you?
No.
The high frame rate that they were doing?
I heard about it. I've never. Well, here's the thing: if you
it looked like a freaking soap opera.
Right. If you go to like a 4K YouTube channel, like the virtual reality stuff, okay, and you watch the high frame rate stuff in there, it's uncanny as well. I don't care if it's a skydiving video or a porn vid or what. There's a weird uncanny valley there for sure, because life. Like what I want to see, and I'm sure there's studies being done on it, I want to know what the human eye's frame rate actually is. From what I understand, 60 frames is around where it's at, around what you can actually imbibe for the most part. I don't know that for certain. I'm sorry, I turned to Sean Connery for a second. I want to know more about that. Because that would inform my argument for or against higher frame rates and stuff. Because to me, that's where that you get to a certain for everything. Nothing can make Rob's hair better. It's perfect as it is in any format. Okay, you put that shit on
we're at 720p right now, guys.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. I love his hair. I just saw it the other day. It's amazing. In fact, I am vaping a Rob Juice original. So, yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah. So it's. I will always go for frame rate over resolution when we talk about this stuff. I am interested to see how far we can put film. Like we could put film at 48 frames. And 48, because I've played games in 48 frames, and you're getting the smoothness that 60 provides without it feeling a little too over the edge. But you're getting the best of both worlds, so it feels tenable, feels okay. So I feel like 48 frames should be the new standard, and then maybe that stays that way for 100 years, because if you
It's so weird. I mean, I think you can get used to anything, but at the same time, it's like, to me, it's like high frame rate is for sports. You know,
I get that.
But like for me, films, there's a dreamlike quality that comes with 24
because of the
frames
motion
per second.
blur. Because of motion blur, which is why it's put into gaming and stuff. But when I play a game, I turn the motion blur off because I don't want that.
Right.
In those, but again, you have to consider the application. But what I'm getting at is it should be the standard. And there should be a way that you can flip the switch on your TV or your player. So you want the 24 frame that it is going to logically blur as motion would occur. So you could have both cake and eat it too situation, right? A film like The Godfather, that doesn't need that. It was shot in 24 frames. I'm fine with it as is. I'm saying as we move forward as a medium, that there should be as many opportunities and many different ways to interpret that visually as possible. There are things that have been shot in recent years that I think were hurt by that lack of ability. Like, I love the Bourne series. I love the 4 films that has him in that role. I think those are great movies. There's not a bad one in the bunch. I'd love to see a bunch more of them, honestly. And I think that the way those are filmed, because the quick cuts are often maligned. Well, my friends, if you had a 48 frames per second refresh rate, if you will, or whatever, if you had the frame rate of 48, those quick cuts would be a lot smoother to the naked eye. You see what I'm saying? So, like, it would, one begats the other. So that's why I feel like the medium, the limitations what we had on filmmaking at the time inhibited this way of editing, this way of storytelling. So the question becomes, where do you draw the line?
Right.
So if you go back to the whole, but where we started on that, what's beautiful is that 50 years later, we have a format, we have a standard that is capable of fully capturing exactly the level of detail and the intended presentation without compromise or compression of The Godfather. So when they get around to releasing a 4K set, which will happen right after the third re-release comes out, mark my words, 6 months or less, they're going to do it. They're going to do 4K, the whole thing, and I'll buy that too.
Well, and that's the same. I mean, I've bought Star Wars more than any series,
and I'd be more inclined to do that. Because 4K being, again, that standard for film, like, knowing what we know because of what the Godfather restoration little thing he taught us about what resolution actually is for 35 millimeter, right? Anything in 4K it's lossless. That's as close as we're going to get. Although it has that headway which can lead to artifacts and pixelization. So it's a really fine line, but that's as close as we're going to get. If we have that and we can do that right, this makes sense. We don't need anything else unless the material calls for it. That's where the technology makes sense. You don't have to shoehorn these things in. So, for example, something shot on videotape, you don't need to go above DVD. You don't at all. That's as high as it has to go. You don't need anything else. You don't. So with film, we have the 4K, which is the same thing. Doesn't have to go any higher than this for 35 millimeter film. We've proven that. And then from here and so on and so forth, which was a fascinating thing to learn. I didn't really know that. I had ideas and I know how it kind of worked, but as soon as I see it in these supplemental materials for Godfather, where they're like, well, here's where it is. It's right here. And we have it here. Boom. And they have a 2K. So now whenever I read 2K transfer, I'm like, oh, so close, you bitches. So close. But I understand why they did it.
It's a cost thing or a capability at the time. So it's like,
Right,
but,
so if you have a 2K transfer on Blu-ray, I get it. I guess their whole thing is we're not going to do a 4K transfer because this isn't a 4K release. I feel like, in terms of cost, go 4K, cut it down for the release if you have to. No problem.
It's the same. I mean, if you've done any kind of content in the last 10, 15 years. You always record, you try to record at the highest quality you can. And even if you're only going to release it at a certain thing, you're still starting at a better place because then you can come down. You can't go up.
Exactly.
So just like this right now is broadcasting at 720p. I can't release it on YouTube at 1080 unless I'm recording in 1080, which I'm not. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's better to start and come down than it is to start low and try to upscale, right?
And we learned that from audio in the 90s. Like, you learned it a lot more poignantly when that analog to digital switch happened.
Yeah.
You know, listen to some old DAT recordings, right? So analog shit going through DAT, and then they put that in the CD, and you can see how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
And then you had, like, one of the first all digital albums I ever heard. There's two of them. Came out the same year. It was Iron Maiden's Fear of the Dark and Malevolent Creation's Stillborn. Were recorded, mixed, and mastered digitally. Those were the first two that I had heard. And in their genres, I believe, were the first ones to do that. And then, like, a Benediction record came out, which sounded way better than both of those records, honestly. And there was a clarity to it, and it was cool, but it was still new, right? So, but it made sense. The medium you were releasing it on. So people that talk about, like, vinyl just has this thing. Well, it does if it was recorded that way. Everything else is kidding yourself. Go fuck a frog. I don't care. That's exactly the right reaction, Rob. You're perfect.
I'm used to that like all the time. My whole life, I've been used to that. I'll say something and people do the same thing.
So anyone that says that to me, I go, okay, let me take this all digital recording and put it on vinyl.
Yeah.
What are you getting out of it? Other than a bragging right and a larger artwork. So I am a firm believer of the medium fitting the content and being okay with that. So I always want to have physical media, particularly for the things that it makes the most sense. Give me the format that is going to be the best presentation of whatever that is, and I'll keep it. I don't have to have everything on 4K or everything on Blu-ray or everything on DVD. Same thing with CD versus digital versus whatever. I'm okay with all of these things coexisting, and I think that as a content imbibing culture, we have to learn to mix and match. It makes sense the way things are being done right now. And fall out of love with, well, this is my thing. I think gaming is much closer to that than audiophiles or even film people, because we're all arguing on these other sides. But in gaming, for the most part, Nintendo cartridge is a Nintendo cartridge, and it's perfect. And the emulation, the file's like that big. It's tiny, but it works, and it's perfect. The only argument to be made there is that emulation has to get better, and it only is getting better. When we can digitize what they did with that analog NES, it's over. Because the libraries have already been out there for years, and I've got perfect ROMs ready to go. When you give me that fully digital alternative, that's a true 1-to-1.
Okay.
Then I'm sorry.
Oh no! Go ahead. No, go ahead.
All my consoles will then just become display pieces, and I'm fine with that. Although I did look at a TV this morning that I really want to get for when I get a larger place again. It's a 55-inch Toshiba, 4K, native 4K, 60 frame refresh rate, 60 hertz, I should say, with 60 frames per second. And on the back, and the big, like, it's got an analog in on the back. So you could just take all your consoles, plug them into a switcher, and I'm like, dude, like, I'm in.
I'm surprised that doesn't already exist. Seems like that should already exist. That shouldn't be a rare thing.
Well, it does exist, but it's less in demand. So you'll find them once in a while. But to find a 4K TV with good specs all around, you can shove a VCR into it or an NES or whatever. Like, that's extremely appealing to me because I don't have to convert everything. That saves me an insane amount of money and time. Because then all I have to do is all my analog stuff goes into an analog changer, which are easy to find and super cheap. And then I can put all my digital stuff into a receiver, which is easy to do and relatively inexpensive, aka I already have them, and just everything's there and go boop 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 boop. I'm done. It's good. So those things, again, these things exist. There's ways to do this, and it's a good time to be into this shit.
Yeah.
Especially when you're discovering new film franchises that are old, like The Godfather.
Right.
And on that note, the entire point of that entire tangent is that Connie's a shit character and I don't like her.
Well, I mean, we've look, the thing is, we could go on for probably another 4 hours on Godfathers 2 and 3, but we're already, where are we? We're at, almost 3 hours. I just wanted to hear what your plan was for the next generation, if any.
For gaming?
Yeah.
It's very simple. The reality of the pre-order culture right now
is ridiculous.
Made me analyze my own needs. So I put out this long thread on Twitter, and what I basically said was that if I can't get a pre-order when I want to get a pre-order, I'm not going to. I'm not going to agonize over it. It's no big deal. The only console I've ever bought at launch was the PS4, and I don't regret that for a second. It was an experience I'll never forget. It was the right console at the right time. I've told the story before, I believe on this show. I may not have. The year that console came out, I was about to just forsake current gen gaming altogether. I was done. The industry I was fed up with. I was sick of it. I'm like, I want no part of this shit. Thank you and goodbye.
The Billy point of view right now.
Yes. And when Sony came out with their angle on what they were going to do with the PS4, I'm like, okay, someone still gets it. I'm in, like Flynn. Let's go. And I switched everything from Microsoft to Sony so I went from an Xbox 360 to a PS3 and moved forward. Got the PS4 at the time, was elated. It was like, oh, this is really cool. This is going to be great. And it has been. It's right there. I love that thing. It's the same one that I picked up 7 years ago, almost to the day coming up. And it was a good purchase. It's been a great generation for gaming. I think arguably one of the best. I would say it's similar. The generations in terms of even numbers tend to be pretty good. So like this generation and then PS2 generation, so on and so forth. You know, people are going to say, well, what about the 360 PS3? You know, it was huge to reinvigorate it. The reason that gets so much hype are two reasons. We had a generation of people getting into gaming for the first time in a big way because visual technology was changing too. So you had the rise of the HD TV, and you had the rise of streaming services, and you had a whole crop of young people that were feeling this. So like the older folks were getting into like the technology side of it, the younger folks were getting into gaming for the first time, and that generation lasted a really long ass time. So it became defining by virtue of that was it. This is what you have, you know. So not to take away from that generation's importance in history, but in terms of moving the medium forward for gaming, I find that like the PS2 era kind of perfected disc-based gaming across the board. You had the original Xbox, you had the PS2, and then you had the Wii. Well, Wii was like towards the end, which bled into the thing. Whatever. But the point being, like, they're all there. GameCube is the one I'm forgetting. The Wii was with the other generation. All excellent consoles. Can't say a bad word about them overall. PS3, Xbox 360, Wii, still some innovation. The aforementioned history, it's great. But then they took the concepts that were introduced here, perfected them this past generation. So this one, it won't be a huge leap. It won't be changing the game. It'll just be a slight perfection. I think that the longer we go on, the smaller the increments go on. I'm okay with that. It's fine. And if every 7 years I'm spending $400 or $500 on one of these things, it's a good investment. Because I do need a 4K player. I'm going to get one. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get both. And they're both going to be disc-based. But I'll get them when I'm ready. 6 months down the line, whatever. So I'll probably get 6 months down the line. I'll probably get the PS5 and the disc-based version, And then within another 6 months, I'll get the Xbox disc-based version as well. I'm really stoked on the backwards compatibility of the new Xbox. Although there are still some limitations, the basic idea of it is great. But for example, like my living room setup's always going to have all the consoles there, or all the necessary consoles anyway, for the most part. And then the on-stream area I have the current as few as possible hooked up, just so that when I'm playing games on Twitch and stuff like that, it's just easier to do. But in the living room, I've got to have everything. When I want to sit down and play, I can be off to the races. So I'm excited for that. There's not. Let me rephrase it. There are 0 launch titles that I feel like I have to have, because any of the launch titles I'm interested in, I can get current gen still if I really want them. And none of them are so compelling that I have to have them right away. And that's always been the case, really, with very few exceptions. When we're talking about going from generation to a generation, okay? It was different back in the day when you had an Atari where this is the only place you can get this. Later, ColecoVision comes along and gives you an alternative, but that's still same generation. Then you go to NES, where it's the only game in town. It's the only place you can get a Super Mario Brothers. That was definitive. You had to have Zelda. These were launch titles, more or less, within that launch window, right? And then you go to, because each generation there was like you can only get this here. And as we've moved further along, and there's more third-party development, and the culture has grown, there's more crossover. So you should not feel the pressure to have to do it right away. You shouldn't, because there's no reason to. However, if you're in that boat and you're able to do it and you get one and you enjoy it, that's awesome. You only benefit from it. There's no downside to it. Because with the PS4, or pardon me, with the PS5, for example, not only are you going to be able to play pretty much every PS4 game you have right on day one, they're giving you like 15 games, some of which you may not have. In my case, there's like 4 or 5 of them that I don't have, which I was like, that's a really smart idea. Really smart. Now, here's the thing. It's probably going to rotate out. They're not going to be there forever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I hope it just continues to grow. But
it's kind of the way that they do it with PlayStation Plus, right? Where you
so
can just
think
download it's in your library and you can just download it.
Right. I feel like what they're going to do is have this library that just sits there. And it's no longer about you get the license and you download it. It's just that it's just there. They're taking a step out of the process. And if that's the case, no problem. I'm okay with it for the most part. Because if you let your membership lapse now, you still lose the license to that thing. Yeah. In most cases.
Yep. You definitely do, because I've done that. I've let my PlayStation Plus go away.
Yeah, and I just earlier this year renewed both Xbox Live and PlayStation Plus for like 2 years or 3 years or something. And I happened to grab that Xbox Game Pass upgrade right before they did away with it. Mm-hmm. So I have Game Pass for like 2 years. So I've set between those two services, like I'm good. If I never buy another game again, like I'm fine. The other reason that I'm not jumping on board are the games that are compatible with the next gen that I play the most, aka Destiny and some other stuff. They're not getting their next gen upgrade
right away.
It's going to take some time. My understanding is that upgrade for Destiny is probably not actually coming until next September, a year from now. I think the reason they're doing that is so they can phase out this generation. In other words, they're giving people a year to get the new consoles, and then like no more support on PS4, because then they'll be able to forget about worrying about the limitations in frame rate, because the new standard is 60 or above, which is music to my ears and my eyes. So I think that the reason I'm so excited about this generation is that you can pick up the same game, whether it's PC, Xbox, PS5, and if you're okay with limiting yourself to 60 frames, which I am, you will get the exact same experience across the board. which is really important to me. I can just decide what controller I want to play it on or whatever. I love this. So as someone who plays Destiny, and we have cross save, we will have cross play coming next year. Presumably, what they've said that's their goal is a year from now to have cross play across the platforms. It lessens my desire to have everything in terms of the delivery system, but I still want them for other reasons. But it'll be nice to be able to just say who wants to play, and I can just play it on the PC or the console, because it also takes pressure off of my computer. If you're telling me I can play the game at the same frame rate I would play anyway on a console and just capture it, I mean, you just lengthen the life of my freaking PC, bro.
Right.
I'm in. So it becomes this, you can do this however you want. So I almost feel like the Xbox is going to go into the living room, the new one, because I've got that gaming experience there, and I can I have all the benefits. I don't need to have it in here because I can get it on the PC or whatever, especially with Game Pass, because I can play games on the PC from the Game Pass, no problem. Or I could get one of those digital ones and put it in the office, you see? And then you've got a PlayStation 5 and the computer for the streaming and all that's fun. Like this is an unprecedented opportunity for someone like me who likes to have these different areas and different ways to approach gaming, to whether it's film or music or now gaming, I can have anything I want in any room without having to buy doubles of anything. That's why I'm excited. But I don't have to have it in 2 months. I don't need to shell out $1,000 in 2 months. I can decide. And I like that.
Yeah,
That's my take on the generation.
Mine was more simple than that. There are games that I'm mostly a PS5 guy when it comes to the exclusives, or the PlayStation, I should say. I love a lot of those exclusives. For the Microsoft side of the exclusives, I figure that since I have a pretty nice gaming PC here, if I want to play them, I can just sign up for Game Pass for a month. If I like it, cool. If I don't like the game, I'm out the $15 and I'm done, or whatever, right?
And I guess my whole point with that is I already have Game Pass for the next 2-3 years.
Right. Well, I'm just talking about me.
Right. So because I have that is more feeding into why having an Xbox is going to be a huge benefit, because I don't have to buy second copies and all that stuff. It's just there. I can. So I totally see where you're coming from. If I did not have Game Pass, the Xbox would not be on my radar until much later in the cycle.
Well, and
because they don't have any good exclusives.
Right. And just like you, on the PlayStation side, since there's not, like Miles Morales, I'd like to play at some point. And I'm sure that there's going to be other games in that kind of area, the launch window, as they said, for like Ratchet and Clank. Sure. I want to play Ratchet and Clank, but I don't have to play it day one, and it's probably not even going to be there day one. So...
And it'll be in the PlayStation collection, too. So.
Right. And then, to complicate it even a little further, the game I'm most looking forward to now is that Hyrule Warriors that's going to be on Switch. In which case, I don't need to buy either one of those systems. Because I guarantee you, because I'm a Legend of Zelda freak, that's what's going to happen. If I bought a PlayStation 5, it would sit there while I play Hyrule Warriors, 23... hours a week, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I know, and that was the whole thing, is like I had my PS5 pre-order ready to go, ready to hit the button, and I went in there and talked to April, and I said, so what do you think? Do you want it? Because if she wanted it, it was a no-brainer. We could share the thing, and it doesn't matter if I'm playing Hyrule Warriors or whatever. She can play the whatever game on PlayStation. She goes, I don't really care. I don't really have time for it right now anyway. And I said, okay, well then I'm just going to not do it. So I had it there. I was ready to go. And I just said, I guess I'm going with Nintendo on this one. And I'm just going to stick with what I've got for now. Which, that's why I want to Switch Pro, damn it. But anyway.
Yeah. No, that's the part of why I've been holding out on Nintendo. I'm waiting for that.
I'm
Give me the non-portable version that goes all in on the specs,
right.
and which will probably lead me to get the only portable version after the fact. I'm okay with having the two separate things. I love the design. I love what it does, but you're so close with this crap. The reason they're never going to do it is because people will want to develop games that are only going to play on that Pro, and that's going to alienate people to have the other versions. And Nintendo, oddly enough, wants people to be able to play on anything. I think it's a smart move. It's why you're not seeing another 3DS. I think what they've done with the Switch, that's their model forever. And I think that they would do well to stick with that. Just give me the Switch 1, the Switch 2, the Switch 3, the Switch 4. Don't change anything else. Maybe mess with the controller design a bit because that's a little wonky. But other than that, having the dockable portable where you can play everything, that's the future, at least for Nintendo. I would love to see the other consoles do that as well. That would be fun.
Yeah. I
had a Vita and I loved it to death, but I never go anywhere. So I was like, I don't need it. You know, I'm just telling the truth, dude.
Well, it's just weird because I love my PlayStation. You know, my PlayStation 4 Pro or whatever it is in there. I think I have a Pro. Yeah, I have a Pro in the living room. You do. And then
I have all of them like that's Pro.
Yeah, there's all. Yeah. It's awesome, but I play the Switch more than anything, and it's because I feel like it's kind of like what I was trying to talk about the other day when PlayStation did their big announcement. Is like Call of Duty with the. I mean, it's so visceral and so violent. I don't want to be. I guess I'm getting old, and I don't need just assault on my senses 24/7. Just give me a fun game that I can go in there and play. Right. And like Breath of the Wild is one of those games that it's relaxing to me. It's like my happy place. I go in there and I can just roam around Hyrule for a couple hours and I'm good.
And for full disclosure to folks, if I had a 1 or 2 monitor setup in my PC area, and then my gaming was out in the living room, I would have a different point of view on the Switch. The fact is, I have a 4 monitor setup in here, and I typically will play the game here, and I've got a movie over here and something else over here, and then something up there. So I'm used to just playing everything at this desk and just playing. So I like just being able to go decide what I want and just go. Which is why the handheld portion of the Switch doesn't hold water for me, because I don't have a TV up here that I'm going to watch a movie idly or stream something with somebody else. I live alone. I am my own niche. So that's why I feel that way about the Switch. If I were in a situation where I did have a roommate, cohabitation partner, whatever you want to call it, wife, whatever, and we were spending time in the living room, that is when a Vita or a Switch comes in really handy. Because then you can just sit there and you guys are binge watching whatever the fuck, and you can play your game, and no one's fighting over anything. And suddenly, should my life change to where that is the thing, Daddy's getting a Switch or whatever the equivalent is at the time. Daddy's going to have one of them for sure. So that I don't have to have that separation so much. For example, like friends of mine that we live together in this big house, they have like this 65-inch TV and then like a 40-inch TV, and they're right next to each other on the wall. And they game together in the same room. Or we'll watch a movie together and play a game. And then they both have their 3DSs. Well, they probably both have Switches now, I'm not sure. Which is cute and whatever and cool and fun and fine. But what I'm saying speaks to those situations. Right? Everyone's different. Everyone's needs are different. There's no right or wrong way to approach any of these generations or gaming systems or how you set up your house or what you tell your significant other or whatever. We're just speaking more to what works for us in the moment. But I will say this in terms of a universal truth. You don't need one of these new consoles at launch, and you're not going to miss out on anything. About 6 months in would probably be the sweet spot. Now, if around Christmas time, if finances are where they should be, and I can come across one, and I can, so if I can afford it and I can get one without going nuts, yeah, I'll probably buy one around then, because they're going to have that second wave of stock, and it should be a lot easier to get one. If the money's not there, or it's not easy to get one, oh, wait a few more months. It's fine. You know, but I'll be happier than a pig in shit when I finally get it. I'll be really happy, because it's a natural continuation of what I've got now, and I'm really happy with what I have now. It's just going to be that much better. But I am not compelled to get it this second. And so I was secretly grateful that the pre-orders went by so fast, so I didn't have to worry about it. And I realized, yeah, and I'm like, so I did the math, and I could have done it. It wouldn't have been super easy, but it would not have been me eating, Cheerios for 2 months. It wouldn't have been anything like that, because I'm eating cheaper now anyway. So then that's where the money would have come from. Really, it would have been all the cheeseburger money would just go straight to the thing, and it would have been easy to do. So it is what it is, right?
They were cones.
So, yeah.
So,
but I will say this much: I had better have one by the time they release the 4K set of The Godfather.
Okay, well, I think on that note, I think we should, because we've been going 3 hours and 20 minutes. Holy crap!
Yes.
But Jim, always a pleasure, sir. It was so much fun.
Yes, I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about 2 and 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down. I just know that it was like, okay, this is taking, like, we are stretching this out further than I expected. But it's good stuff. It's fun. It's so much fun to talk about movies at that level where you can really dig into it. It's so much fun. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Jim, again, thank you. Do you have anything to plug or anything, or are we?
Give to the Game Chasers Kickstarter for the film, because we have stuff to do.
Nightbot helped us out earlier, so it's in the chat.
Yeah. If you're watching this after the fact, please, because we can. Bucho, I'll come back. I promise. Don't worry. I got you. I'm gonna butter up Rob and maybe see if we can come back sooner rather than later. All right. Even if it's pre-recorded, we'll do something.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we can do. Maybe we can make part 2 and part 3 YouTube exclusive and do it totally offline to minimize distractions.
Maybe that's it. Maybe
that's the play. I don't know, but we'll find out on the next. Well, maybe in a tweet or something, because it won't be the next episode when you find out. You just find out when you find out. And until then, I'm going to miss you guys, and I'm trying to draw it out because I don't want to go. But we have to go.
Okay.
I love you guys. I'm thinking about you.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Yes, of course.
Guys, thank you. And we'll see you on Wednesday.